Advise members of the following formal substitution for today's meeting. Today we are going to have Deputy Thomas Gould will attend in substitution for Deputy Imelda Munster, and also Senator Marie Sherlock will attend in substitution for Senator Annie Hoey, and Deputy Rory O'Muraku will attend in substitution for Deputy Chris Andrews. So, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting has been convened with the Minister for Tourism, Culture, Gaeltacht, Arts, Sports and Media, Minister Catherine Martin TD, and her officials to discuss oversight of RTE's expenditure of public funds and governance issues and plans for longer-term support and funding for public service media. You're all very welcome to our guests. I'd like to welcome Minister Martin and our officials here in Committee Room 2. As Ministers present, it is not expected that any officials will speak in public session. The format of today's meeting is such that I will invite the Minister to deliver an opening statement, which is limited to 5 minutes. This will then be followed by questions from members of the committee, and as you're probably aware, the committee may publish the opening statement on its web page. Is that agreed, colleagues? Before we proceed with the Minister's opening statement, members are reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice to the effect that they should not comment on, criticise or make charges against a person outside the Houses or an official, either by name or in such a way as to make him or her identifiable. I'd also like to remind members of the constitutional requirements that members must be physically present within the confines of Leinster House in order to participate in our public meetings. And I think everybody is present. So, with the housekeeping out of the way, I'd like to invite Minister Martin to make her opening statement.
Mágad as a cairlí agus a bhalla an cuiste tá mé buíoch as an gesture chuir síos a dhéanamh ar cursaí a bhaineann le riadachas agus muoinú de RTE agus le todhchaí na heagraíochta. Tám tiomanta mar ara na man, athbhreithnú agus aithnú acán a dhéanamh ar chóras an cadúnas televíse. Chairperson and members of the committee, I welcome the opportunity to speak to you today in relation to a number of matters relating to the governance of RTE and the future funding of public service media. While it has been said before, I believe that any discussion on public service media must acknowledge the very important place which the media holds in our society. This is evidenced by the significant public debate and discourse around RTE and indeed the detailed investigations which this committee has undertaken over the last 8 months. As Minister for Media, I will not be deflected from the priority of delivering reform. I am determined that this will be the government that decides on a sustainable funding model for public service media. In an increasingly turbulent world, public service broadcasting is an essential pillar of our democracy. It is a trusted source of objective, fact-checked news, as well as a crucial forum for celebrating and promoting our distinct culture, sports and way of life. It must and it will be supported. I would like to first address the question of the reform of RTE. While there have been a number of reports published into a variety of specific issues related to RTE since last June, what was ultimately required was a wider and higher level review of the organisation. This needed to encompass the governance framework which was in place, the organisational culture or cultures which prevailed, how contractors were engaged, and wider HR and employment policies. It was also important that any such reviews were completely impartial and independent. It was for this reason that the government established the 2 expert advisory committees. In order to bring about meaningful change, these committees were tasked not only with reviewing what had happened and why, but also to bring forward recommendations to chart a new way forward. While I had hoped to have the reports by the end of this month, I have now been advised that some final review processes need to be completed before the committees are in a position to submit their reports to me. The review of governance and culture will shortly undergo the necessary fact-checking processes to ensure that fair procedures have been followed. It is expected that these processes will take at least 3 weeks. The review of contractor fees, HR and other matters will be finalised earlier. On that basis and in light of their complementary nature, I expect that both reviews will be submitted to me during March. I have consistently stated that while government is continuing to discuss the most appropriate basis on which to support public service media into the future, a final decision on this cannot be taken until the 2 expert advisory committee reviews have been considered by government and published. Let me reiterate that I am fully committed to bringing forward reform of the TV licence so that the necessary funding support for public service media can be put on a sustainable footing. While funding for RTE is a significant element of the public funding model, this will also continue to support valuable schemes such as Sound and Vision. More importantly, it will enable a widening of the scope of supports so that public service content produced by a range of media platforms and outlets, including local newspapers, can be supported through new media fund schemes. I am committed to supporting the objectives of a reformed, transformed RTE as set out in the organisation's strategic vision. Ultimately, a new funding model will not just safeguard a necessary pillar of our democratic society, that of public service media, but it will also provide for greater stability for RTE and its staff, and for the many other valued workers in other media and in the independent sector who provide public service content. This is the core principle which underpins my work. And allied to that is the need for maximum transparency and openness in all operations, but particularly as regards funding. Which brings me to the events of last week. Following the publication of the report by McCann Fitzgerald into previous voluntary exit schemes into RTE, the Director General appeared before this committee and referred to more recent exits of other senior members of staff during his tenure. As the committee will be aware, the DG had stated that it was not possible to provide the detailed information sought due to legal constraints. Having consistently called for maximum transparency on these issues, I asked the DG to seek updated legal advice on the disclosure of key details with regard to the most recent severance payments to a number of senior executives from RTE. While the legal advice is clear that neither data protection law nor confidentiality clauses cannot be breached, I still believe that maximum possible transparency is required into these matters so that we can continue the process of rebuilding trust in RTE as one of our public service broadcasters. I met with the former RTE chair and DG on Monday of last week to seek an update on this matter. During the course of that meeting, I raised media reports which referred to possible board and chair involvement in the approval of severance packets to key senior executives last year. It was of the utmost importance to me to ascertain accurate information in relation to this, as I was not aware of the board's role, specifically the approval of the package in question by its remuneration committee, and I had not received any formal correspondence relating to such an important matter. I was told by the then chair that there was no formal approval role for the board in these two specific recent exit packages. Later that day, I outlined this position to the media at a press event in government buildings. Ahead of a subsequent meeting with the former chair and DG on Wednesday of last week, I received a letter from RTE outlining the updated legal advice it had received around whether it could disclose the full details of the recent severance packages. One paragraph referenced board involvement where relevant in termination payments. In light of this, I again sought confirmation on this issue from the former chair and again received confirmation that there was no board involvement whatsoever in respect of the severance packages agreed for Richard Collins or Rory Coveney. The then chair also pointed out that a new process requiring board approval would apply going forward. Subsequently, on Thursday, the former chair contacted departmental officials to say that she had inadvertently given me incorrect information and that the severance package for the former CFO of RTE had in fact been approved on October the 10th by the RTE Board's Remuneration Committee, of which she was also chair. The failure to provide accurate and timely information gave me considerable cause for concern. Regrettably, this was not the first time that the then chair had failed to give me a clear account of her and the board's work at RTE. My relationship as media minister is through the chair. This relationship is fundamental to the development of a positive and productive future for the organisation. And confidence in the reliability of communications between both is absolutely critical, particularly at such a sensitive time in the broadcaster's history. As I viewed this as an important matter, I believed it merited a formal and direct approach. I sought to meet with her on Friday last to address the issues directly and openly, to seek clarification on the matter and to ensure this would not reoccur. I am willing to elaborate further on the events of last Thursday at this committee. I know there has been much discussion around my appearance on prime time last Thursday night. I would like to point out that I had agreed to this interview 2 days earlier. It was a good opportunity to give my views on the updated legal advice on exit payments and to discuss the future funding of public service media. Clearly, I would much prefer if I could have had the meeting with Siún Ní Raghallaigh on Friday, and I do regret that she chose to resign rather than have that discussion. I would like to put it on the record again, the significant contribution which Ms Ní Raghallaigh has made over the past 15 months. Her commitment to transforming RTE was obvious, and I want to offer genuine thanks for her hard work. My focus turns now to the appointment of a new chair that can continue the important work of reform and rebuilding trust. I will be progressing this matter with government colleagues as soon as possible. I will also be meeting the RTE board in the coming days. I look forward to engaging positively and constructively with them to ensure our collective objective is progressed and we ensure a vibrant, stable, sustainable national broadcaster that future generations of Irish people need and deserve. Gurb míle mágad as éiste glum agus curfew mé fáilte ribh aon ceiste uibh inis.
Thank you, Minister, for that comprehensive opening statement. I'll now proceed to questions and answers with members. Colleagues, you have been circulated with the speaking slot, so you know where your time is, and we have it time for 10 minutes each. And if I could ask you to use that in whatever way you want, but to stick to the 10 minutes if at all possible, so we can give everybody an opportunity to have to say what they need to say today. So I'll begin, please, and could I ask, call on Senator Fintan Moorfield. The floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes.
And I'd like to welcome the Minister and her team to the Oireachtas Committee. Minister, I have to put it to you that instead of being in a television studio last Thursday night, you should have been sitting across the table from Siún Ní Raghallaigh, the former chairperson of RTE. I want to know, why did you decide to prioritise a media interview above a meeting with your chairperson, the chairperson of the national broadcaster whom you appointed? Why did you not dedicate yourself to Siún Ní Raghallaigh that night?
As I said in my statement earlier, it was a pre-arranged interview. These issues emerged on Thursday, and we were dealing with a number of phone calls through the officials. I felt it was worthy of a direct meeting, face-to-face, with all the officials who had been involved in the meetings on the Wednesday and Monday. So I requested that meeting. I thought it would be wrong for me to just pull out of an interview that was pre-arranged, and I felt it needed, rather than a rushed meeting on a Thursday night, it required a detailed meeting on the Friday morning to clarify a number of errors that had been from the Wednesday and Monday meetings.
From one politician to another, media interviews are rearranged all of the time. Press interviews are cancelled all of the time. And this was a moving situation with circumstances changing all of the time. So are you saying that a press interview was more important than your relationship with the chairperson of RTE?
In fairness, there had been a number of meetings that week, as I said, on the Monday and 2 on the Wednesday. This issue was in constant flow on Thursday. So it was too late by the time I had the full facts on Thursday evening to pull out of a media engagement, and I wanted to have the proper time on Friday morning. I felt it might be a very detailed discussion.
I don't think your first job as minister is to go on the television, and I'm trying to understand what your thoughts were, driving out to RTE. Surely you knew you were going to be asked, had you confidence in Siún Ní Raghallaigh? And surely you knew the consequences of not expressing confidence in the chair. Surely you knew that would mean that the chair, Siún Ní Raghallaigh, would have to resign. Well,
as I said in the statement, when I'd arranged the the primetime interview, it was to do with the advice that was issued. It was to do with the future funding model. So I'd hoped that the interview, when I'd agreed to it, when I was on my way out to primetime, that's what would be the focus of that interview.
You didn't expect to be asked if you had confidence in Siún?
Well, it's hard to really answer that one because I can't predict what's going to happen in an interview. When I had arranged the interview, it was to do with the future funding model and it was to do with the legal advice.
Did you? I think it's. I don't think it's. I think it's ridiculous that you wouldn't think that you would be asked the question if you had confidence in Siún Rallig. And I'm wondering, if that didn't cross your mind, I suppose then you didn't think about texting her or giving her the decency of saying what you were going to say in prime time. Certainly that's the question I would expect if I was the minister. If going out to RTE with everything going on, that's the one question I would expect to be asked, is if I had confidence in the chairperson of RTE. And you didn't anticipate that question, and so therefore I just think that's slightly ridiculous. And I think it then fails to give a level of decency to Siún, who has been an incredible public servant, who many people I speak to think was steadying the ship, who has given incredible public service to our country, be it through TG4 or RTE, and was steadying the ship. So you didn't think to pick up the phone to her before addressing the nation on prime time?
Well, I wasn't keen to have a phone call with the then chair because I think it required a face-to-face meeting with the officials in the room who had attended when I was given the incorrect information on the Monday and Wednesday. So I wanted people there to witness the discussion who had witnessed the previous discussions on the Monday and Wednesday. I really wasn't expecting any no confidence question because I was hoping we could meet on the Friday. And the former chair was aware that I was going to prime time and the issues which arose during the week were likely to arise in relation to the legal advice on those two severance packages and in relation to the future funding model.
I think anyone watching prime time would have said that Siún had no choice but to go. Who wouldn't go after hearing your interview? So was it a decision or was it a mistake to effectively let the chairperson go on prime time?
I think if they, you can't not be honest and switch that on and off when you want, when you're the minister demanding transparency and you're asked questions in relation to the board, considering that the board and the chair to the board is the direct relationship. So I had to be transparent on that programme. And it was a case of, I just could not express confidence in someone, but I was doing everything I could under repeated questioning to not say I have no confidence because I wanted to afford the opportunity to speak to her on the Friday morning. As I said, part of having full confidence, absolute confidence in a chair is to be able to rely on accurate information, on accurate communications, and that is really of paramount importance. In this entire crisis, it's the establishment of facts and the transparency around facts is what will lead to the reform.
What are the prospects now of reform given everything that has happened? What are the prospects of direct exchequer funding given the error of judgment that I believe that you have made and the unfairness given to the chairperson of RTE? What are the chances now of reform taking place in RTE?
Just to reiterate again, Senator,
because you have been the consistent figure here since Steve Forbes through the new Director General Kevin Backers. You have always been in place.
Just to reiterate again, I believe a minister has to be truthful, and to not share information that had emerged that day would be me withholding information and would be facing a very different committee. I'd probably be here before the committee for other reasons if I had done that, actually. On reform, I have said I'm absolutely focused on delivering, where consecutive governments have failed, on delivering the reform of the funding model for public service broadcasting. And this government is absolutely committed to that. That hinges on the recommendations of the expert advisory committees. And we're awaiting those recommendations, and they will arrive in March.
You summoned the Director General and the Chair to a meeting last Monday, and I would have thought that you would be prepared for that meeting. And one of the things that you would have said to your officials is, what do we have on the Collins package? That you would be checking your stuff before going into that meeting. Did you not ask your officials, did that conversation not take place? And if the conversation took place and no one told you that Siún rang the Secretary General, then why is Siún being hung out to dry on that?
Well, I suppose the first question I asked in that meeting was in relation to the reports to do with the Rory Coveney exit package that I read at the weekend, that the Chair had an approval role in that. I found that a little bit astonishing, because I would have been absolutely confident that that happened in July. It had been conveyed to me as a resignation. So that I asked in that meeting, why haven't you clarified this error in the report? A statement from RTE saying that the former chair with the DG had approved that package. So I just couldn't understand how it was still there 24 hours later and hadn't been clarified. They said it was inaccurate and that had no role. And I asked, well, did you know? I asked the Chair, directed the question to the Chair, I asked the Chair, did you know that it wasn't a resignation and not tell me? And I was told, yes, I did know. I should have told you. I'm sorry, I forgot. That was the first thing that happened on the Monday. And that led to the final, the next question in relation, had you any role whatsoever in the other package? And said, no, I did not have any role in that. And that's why I went out to actually correct the record publicly that Monday evening, to say I just want to correct what was reported in the wrong on Sunday, that the Chair had and the Board had no role whatsoever in approving either of these packages.
In conclusion, and I'll just finish with a comment, Minister, I fear at worst that this is this was a planned effort to get rid of a very capable chairperson, a very capable woman who I believe was steadying the ship, who always struck me as a very genuine public servant, who was clearly on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for €35,000. And I think on this occasion, with respect to you, I think you have crashed the car here, and not only that, you've driven it as fast as possible into the wall, and we're in possibly now a worse place than we have been since the start of this crisis.
Okay, thank you very much.
May I respond?
Okay, very
just to say, at no stage have I said it was intentional. But the problem is, if I'm not getting the correct information, if the Chair has been pressed on numerous occasions for clarification in relation to her role in approving, for example, the packages, in her role in knowledge of another exit package, if I'm not getting the correct information, how can I act properly as a minister? How can I be a minister in charge of the facts if the facts are not being given to me?
And I will conclude and move on because we have so many people to get through. I'm going to call on Senator Shane Castis. The floor is yours and you have 10 minutes.
Thanks, welcome, Minister, and your team. Minister, your statement to us tonight in respect of the events of last week sets out that on two separate occasions last week you asked the Chair was there a formal approval role for the Board, and on two occasions Siún Ratlig said quite clearly to you no. When the RT Chair corrected her version of these events last Thursday, did you feel you'd been lied to by the Chair?
2 days, but it was, I would say, several occasions in those two meetings. As I just said to the senator, again, putting on the record, the former chair has done incredible work in.
But did she lie to you last week?
I don't believe it was intentional, but what we have is a situation where I now can't rely on accurate information.
But then do you feel that she purposely misled you on those occasions before correcting it?
I've never said that.
I know you didn't.
Yeah,
I'm just asking you, in the context of just trying to understand it, did you feel that you had been either lied to or purposely misled, given, as you said, you asked on numerous occasions very direct questions on a very direct exit package?
I do not believe it was intentional, but that does not, take away from the fact that in getting inaccurate information on several occasions, there's an issue there. Senator, how can I be in charge of the facts even if it's unintentional? Someone's not recollecting that they chaired the meeting that approved.
You cite in your statement here tonight that this was not the first time that the chair had in fact failed to give you clear accounts of her work or the work of the board. What were the other occasions?
Well, on the very first occasion was in relation to a committee hearing where it was revealed that she had sought the resignation of Dee Forbes, and she rang me the next day to apologise because she forgot to tell me that she had sought the resignation of Dee Forbes. As I outlined to the Senator Warfield there, on the Monday there was a question about the knowledge of the Rory Coveney exit package, and did she in fact know that it wasn't a straightforward resignation and not tell me? And she admitted, yes, I did know and I should have told you and I'm sorry. Okay. And then that led on to the Monday and the 2 meetings on Wednesday.
Okay. So clearly in your mind, you had now been fed a series of inaccurate or misleading pieces of information. And given the fact that you've used such a line in your opening statement that this wasn't the first time you'd been given wrong information from Siúna Rathlig, is it the case from your perspective that your blood was up going up to RT that night to do prime time and you were going to show not just RTE but Siúna Rathlig who was boss, and that's why you ended up throwing her under the bus on television last Thursday night?
Certainly not, and anyone that knows me knows I'm not someone who would anger like that, would act like that.
Okay.
It's purely from knowing my responsibility in a crisis, that I need to be in full possession of all facts at all times.
Okay. So going back
learning that suddenly there is a recollection of something, even though the former chair had been pressed on several occasions.
Okay, but given then the seriousness of that situation, you could have backed out of prime time. This is politics, and given that you'd sought a meeting with the chair on the Friday morning, at which you knew you could have cleared the air, the meeting you said in your statement that you wish you had, did you plan, given that your statement that tonight shows you felt your relationship had completely broken down, did you plan to seek Siúna Rathlig's resignation on your office on the Friday morning?
Absolutely not, but it did.
But it's clear that you came to the end of the road. You've said that. You'd reached the end of the road with your relationship with the chair on the basis that you felt you couldn't trust her anymore.
I think you're putting words into my mouth. I didn't use that language. I said I wanted to meet her the next day, and I'd asked and I'd written to her to meet her the next day. And on prime time, I had, I suppose, an opportunity to correct the record since the press conference on Monday, where I said there was no board approval whatsoever. And I really believe if the focus of the last 8 months has been about we need the facts, we need transparency, we need openness, I have to show leadership on that too. What was the alternative for me to conceal the facts?
Did you or any of your political advisors discuss with the primetime team the issue of whether you had confidence in Siún, and to ask for that question to be planted in that discussion? Well,
as with any interview, there's always I suppose you'd know yourself, Senator, you go through the topics. And as I pulled up to prime time, I did become aware that the news was about to break, that I had been given the incorrect information that day. And so it was flagged that I was willing to speak to the issue.
So your advisors had flagged to the research team or the presenters that you were willing to answer a question in respect of having confidence in
no,
the...
absolutely not.
That wasn't planted with the team, no?
No, not, no.
Last Monday night...
That an issue had emerged and I was willing to speak to it.
Last Monday night at 6:30 p.m, we all here received an email from Kevin Backhurst, the Director General, lovely picture of him there. And he told us about your meeting last Monday, and he described it, and quotes, as positive and constructive meeting, and that he highlighted to you, quote, RTE's commitment to transparency and the processes and procedures, end quote. Minister, the DG, he knew these processes and approvals, and he sat in that room with you last Monday and the chair, and obviously said nothing either. He said nada. Do you have confidence in the Director General, given that he sat in that room and said nothing on the role of the board of the exit packages process at that meeting last week?
As I've always said, my direct role is with the chair. And my questions, whenever I meet the two of them together, it's quite clear who I am directing the questions to.
But we are now at the centre of a storm of the national broadcaster, and this man has been brought in to clean it up. He sat in the room with you in the chair, and he said nothing in terms of your direct questions about the process that was involved for that exit package and whether the board was approved. How can you have confidence in the Director General and not in the chair?
Because I have confidence in the job of work that the Director General is
So you do have confidence in the Director General?
Yes.
You do have confidence in the Director General?
I've stated that before.
Okay. Minister, they were a team. They were a team. They closed, as evident in his statement last week, with the huge regard he had for Siúna Ratalig. But if Siúna Ratalig misled you in that room last week, which is clear we've extrapolated here that she did as far as you're concerned, then so did Kevin Backhurst. You summoned them last Monday to discuss the process involved in the exit package for the top executives such as Richard Collins. And if you were misled by the chair, you were misled by the Director General, and how can you tonight express confidence in him given that he was complicit as well?
Because the direct line of communication between a Minister for Media and RTE is the chair of the board.
Minister, that's amazing.
The chair provided me with inaccurate information.
And he sat in the room. He sat in the room and listened to that inaccurate information be given to you. He sat there and knowingly sat there and let that misinformation be given to you. Either that or nobody knows what's going on in RTE whatsoever.
I think the DG's role is very distinct. And again, I'm saying my role or my connection is with the chair of the board.
That's an amazing.
That's who I've responsibility
That's an amazing admission that you have two of the most senior. Why bother summon him at all? Was he there to make the tea? That is amazing. And it's not consistent to say that you have confidence in him and no confidence in the chair because your relationship was with the chair and he's actually running the ship. He's the paid executive on hundreds of thousands of euro to run the ship. And you say that you have confidence in him while he sat there and allowed the misinformation be spoken to you.
But the issue being addressed, the issue that emerged was in the role of the chair, and it's for the chair to
That's amazing.
To clarify
Either
that.
they should both be gone or they should both be in their jobs. Was this personal against the chair, Minister, because you felt she'd misled you too many times and this was the end of the road?
No, absolutely not, and I think you've asked that in a number of different ways. I would have had a lot of respect and a good working relationship with the former chair. But unfortunately, even though I had that good relationship, it emerged that I just could not, as a minister, depend on accurate information.
I cannot believe, Minister, that you can differentiate that two people sat in the room, two people were complicit in the same misinformation being given to you, but you can have confidence in one and no confidence in the other. That doesn't tally whatsoever. Minister,
to conclude,
Minister,
Senator.
you say that you have not received any formal correspondence relating to the role of the board in the exit package, but obviously the Business Post detailed on Sunday that your 3 senior officials, Catherine Lick and Trina Quill and Stephen Ryan, were informed at the PAC on October 12th in terms of reference on the board's remuneration. Did nobody inform you of the situation as that emerged?
I read that report, and I think it was said that they were explicitly told. My reading of what transpired at that PAC meeting was that Ms Mullooly had outlined the changes which would apply in the future. Indeed, the language she used was, it will now present a report, it will now report to the board. And again, at this point, we were aware that Mr Collins had left RTE, and there was no reason to believe anything other than the DG had made that decision without board approval.
And in respect,
the only formal communication.
on this one, sorry, Chair, on the report that Junior Rahilly called Ms Licken on October the 10th and told that there had been an agreement with Richard Collins, and you said that Ms Licken has no recollection of being told that the package was, in quotes, approved. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. That just because she said she's no recollection doesn't mean it didn't happen. Have you checked again with Ms Licken as to whether her recollection has changed this week, similar to the way that Ms Rahilly's memory changed last Thursday?
A word, Minister, yes or no?
I checked with the Secretary, on the Thursday and the Friday.
And her recollection is still that she has no memory of being told that it was agreed?
That it received board approval. She had been told that the independent mediation process had concluded,
okay,
but not board approval.
Thank you very much. Moving on, Senator Micheál Carey, the floor is yours and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and very welcome to the Minister. Just in your introductory piece, you mentioned about asking the question on the Monday and then you asked the question on Wednesday again. Just maybe elaborate on why you asked the question a second time. And in your as an opening statement as well, you're willing to elaborate further on the events of last Thursday. What are the events that you want to elaborate on? And I suppose just in relation to prime time, and has been raised here by the other previous members, to be quite honest, it's difficult to accept that you would not expect to have been asked the question of having confidence in the RTE chair, and especially as you've just said just only a number of minutes ago that you had been informed prior to 9 o'clock the news was going to break on the events of the Thursday. So naturally enough, I would imagine a professional like Miriam McCannell was going to ask a question like that, and I think whoever, maybe your advisor, should have warned you or forewarned you that would be that question would be put forward. But maybe just elaborate on the events that you've mentioned in your opening statement.
In relation to that, I'd say it's impossible for me to predict what questions I'll be asked, but I suppose I'm always prepared for any questions. And in relation to the Thursday night, I think I was pushed on a number of occasions, and what I was trying to do my best was not to say I'd no confidence. I was trying to keep the door open as much as possible to that meeting on the Friday. In relation to I think I've outlined clearly on the Monday what transpired, that the questions were in relation to the role of the chair of the board, as I had read. The reason that I had to ask again is on the Wednesday, I received a copy of the legal advice in advance of it being published. So I was meeting with the chair and the DG to discuss that, but there was a cover letter to me just outlining here are the findings and of the legal advice. But what really jumped out at me was a paragraph on the second page that referenced board involvement where relevant in termination payments. And it was just instantly, I circled the letter on the day, and it was the first question I led with in that meeting. Even though I was there the full purpose of that meeting was to discuss the legal advice that had just landed, there was something about that paragraph that just didn't sit right with me. So in light of that, I again sought the confirmation on the issue from the former chair, along the lines of, I don't understand this paragraph. Why does it state that? It indicates there may have been some role. Can I again ask you, are you 100% sure? Are you absolutely sure there was no role whatsoever in any of these legal packages with the board, with yourself. And again, I was told by the former chair, nothing. And in fact, the chair then pointed out, but in future, Minister, we will have a role. In future, in severance payments, the board, the remuneration committee will have to approve them, but not on these occasions. So it was very clear the line of questioning on that, and it was very clear the answers I was receiving.
And while that was being said, Kevin Parkhurst was sitting there in the same room and made no comment at all to contradict the comments that the chairperson had made with regard to it.
No.
I don't have confidence in Kevin Parkhurst after hearing that. I think he's compromised in his role in his position, that he made no comment on that, despite the fact that he knew that that wasn't correct. And he should have given that information to you as the Minister on behalf of government. So I feel he's compromised in his position on that basis. Who was going to break the news at 9 o'clock? Where did that word come from, that this story was going to break?
There was a number of press queries in relation to me being misinformed during the week. I've no idea. I've no idea how that happened. I was shocked that those questions were being asked. We've been having meetings probably the last 9 months, and one person in particular hasn't been here. And just your view, should the former Director General D. Forbes come before this committee? What would your view be on that? Absolutely.
Or would your view then be similar to the former Secretary General, Catherine Nicken, coming to a committee meeting of this?
If a formal invitation is issued to the former Secretary General, then yes, I think that would be helpful. But no formal invitation, is my understanding, has been issued by this committee. So then I think the former Secretary General would give that consideration. And
indeed, Sue O'Reilly as well, even the fact that she's left that role. Yes. I think we need that to get clarity.
Just interject, sorry, Chair. I have proposed in writing that an open invitation, a standing invitation, would issue to Sue O'Reilly in the event of her choosing to accept an opportunity to address this committee with any relevant information. I just wonder, maybe could we get agreement from the committee that would issue to the chair, in the interest of fairness, that she would have an opportunity to have her voice heard as well in this discussion.
To both Sue O'Reilly and Catherine Nick.
Yeah. Agreed. And D. Forbes as well.
Clerk just wants me to remind your good selves that as former General Secretary, she doesn't have to, but on foot of the fact that she may want to, and former chair. But
I'm sure they wouldn't.
Yeah, so there's an agreement across committee that standing invitations would be issued to both the former chair and the former Secretary. Is that okay? Thank you. You can continue, Senator Carrihy.
The former chair rang the Secretary General, I think Fergal O'Cullig, to inform her that she had misinformed you twice last week in relation to the CFO payment coming before the committee. Is there a note of that conversation in the department?
Yes, we've a note of all the conversations from last Thursday.
Could that be provided to the committee?
Yeah, for transparency, yes. Yeah, of course.
I suppose just, and the question was asked about Kevin Parkhurst, do you have confidence in your officials in the department?
Yes, I have confidence in my officials in the department, and the work they have done since this issue emerged has been 24/7. I have absolute confidence in them.
Just in regard to the packages, I suppose you're in the role a number of years, and we're going back to Rita O'Keefe. At any stage, have you ever been informed of any of these package deals or exit deals or payments? Have they ever been made known to you in your role as Minister by your officials?
The actual amount of the...
Yeah.
No, because I've always, I addressed this last week. The same rules apply to the officials as to me, as everyone else. The law applies to us as to everyone else. So the legal advice was clear last week that it still stands. No, we don't have that information.
It wasn't, and none of your officials would have had that information?
No.
Would you be in favour of a court order in the public interest to get that information?
A court order? Well, I think the legal advice was clear that the confidentiality clauses cannot be be breached. I think there's a GDPR problem there as well. I've always said, though, if in my conversations with the DG, if there's a way, find a way, and I suggested speaking to the people themselves to see if they would waive their confidentiality. So whatever can bring transparency to those is welcome, but I do believe, as outlined in the legal advice, that the confidentiality cannot be breached, and I believe there's GDPR issues too.
So it was my understanding that there was a court order could be taken to get that information. Maybe I'm incorrect. Would you be supportive of whatever mechanism needs to happen, would happen, to get that information out into the public domain? Once, as you've said yourself, none of the officials that are here or other officials in the department have had knowledge of them figures.
No one in the department has knowledge of those figures, and I remain, as I've always have, maximum transparency.
So you would be supportive of whatever mechanism, whether it's a court order or whatever, to be put in place to get that information?
I've always said I'm in favour of maximum transparency to explore. That's why I asked the DG to get the legal advice. I'm not a lawyer, Senator, so I don't know what you're suggesting there, the legalities of it, the processes around it, but I've always said maximum transparency.
Thank you. And I suppose, looking to the future, and you mentioned about the 2 expert reports and the need for reforms in public sector broadcasting. The reality is now we're in a situation now where we've no chair. We need a chair. We need someone very, very strong in that role. It could be said it might be difficult to get somebody to take on that role after what's happened over the last week. Have you approached anybody? And I suppose, what experience are we looking for now in the person that's going to have to take on this role? And it's probably one of the most important appointments in recent years in government, to make sure that we save what's turning into a sinking ship now, to be quite honest.
We are considering a number of people currently, so I'll be discussing that with the leaders, and I hope that we will be in a position to appoint a chair as soon as possible, hopefully within a week, if we can do that. It would be a case of, under the Act, that I would have to bring a nomination for approval by government. But we are currently looking at that, and I think it could be a range of experience from governance to there's a lot of experience there that could suit, from experience to chairing, or experience of governance, or experience accounting. It's a wide range of skills, so that's why we're approaching people with different skill sets.
No, thanks very much, Minister. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senator. Con now on Deputy Matthew McGrath. The floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes.
Walter Ocean Tara, Arsentina. Minister, who appointed the board of RTE?
Sorry?
Who appointed the board of RTE?
Well, through the PASS process, we make appointments, and of course, you do in the committee too, have responsibility for making some appointments too that you recommend to me that I then bring to government. You have the final responsibility? Government sign off.
To you, obviously. Minister, you're in the government, Minister, you have not addressed the issue decisively, allowing it to continue to erode public trust. Would you accept that?
Excuse me?
You haven't addressed this situation properly as the Minister in charge, and you're allowing the public's confidence in RTE to be further eroded. Would you accept that?
I have been working very hard on this. I think the key piece of this are the expert advisory committees that I set up very early on. One on HR and staff, the other on governance and culture. I set up those investigations. They will shortly report to us. I think they're key because they're the only reports that will have recommendations in them. Most recently, I pushed with the DG to seek for clarity on the severances, and indeed going forward to look at capping on those severances.
Spare me
I've asked for the strategic vision in RTE, and that was
no such thing, I'd imagine, a strategic vision. And Minister, I said, does the DG talk to you, or is he just sit dumb when you spoke to the chair? Does he respond to you? Or do you do sign language?
He responds in questions that I addressed to him, obviously, but I would point out that the DG is responsible to the board.
But he sits idly by when the chair is misinforming you. He sits idly by when the chair is misinforming you.
This is the direct line of questions was to the chair.
But no matter, he was in the room, so he's the DG. You just said he's responsible to the board.
The issue here is that the chair could not give me accurate information on numerous occasions.
Well, Minister, I put it to you that you have failed to put the right questions to our RT board through the chair, which is the only person you can talk to, you say. You also have failed to ask the right questions of the chair, or indeed of the DG, who comes just as a mute person to be accompanied. Somebody said making the tea. I don't want to insult the man, but I believe that he must know if he's trying to clean up the mess in there. And it is a mess, an unholy mess. And you might be aware of my comments at the very start of this last July, that I believe that Pat or herself weren't equipped to investigate this. It should have been the fraud squad, or even CAB, because there has been money put aside to deal with possible revenue, a sizable sum of money, in the region of 20 million, to investigate possible irregularities in bogus employment. And nobody else, no other company in the country has that opportunity afforded to them. So why is it afforded to RTE?
Can I just say that you said I don't ask direct questions. I actually couldn't have been more direct than I was last week in asking the chair on numerous occasions in relation to the role of the chair in approving those packages and the role of any role whatsoever of the board. Under the Broadcasting Act, my direct relationship with RTE is with the chair of the board, and there is an obligation under the Code of Practice for Governance of State Bodies, and it refers to areas where indeed there is an obligation on the chairperson to keep the minister informed and advising the minister and making sure that I'm kept advised of all matters.
Thank you. At what point, Minister, did you lose confidence in the former chair of the board, Mr. Rahilly?
Well, I was hoping to have the conversation on the Friday morning with her, but obviously, I felt I could not rely on accurate information, having pressed the issue on Monday and again on numerous occasions on the Wednesday in relation to whether she had a role whatsoever, in being told that it was then pointedly said to me, but we will have in future. We didn't in this occasion, but going forward we will.
Okay.
And then on the Thursday, I actually just couldn't understand on the Thursday the first phone call saying that was wrong. I actually chaired the committee that approved it.
But did they give you the right, was your effective public dismissal of the chair on RT appropriate or indeed, professional from Cabinet Minister to do so in that manner?
That was not my intention whatsoever. I wanted to meet her. I wanted to outline what had arisen that day. It was the first opportunity to correct the record. Where I had said publicly on foot of the information supplied to me by the chair, I had corrected the record of reports at the weekend and said there was absolutely no board approval. I felt compelled that when asked to share the information that I had, rather than conceal it.
Minister, on public television,
it was a very
you could have waited,
situation.
you could have cancelled the programme as others have asked. Instead, you could have easily pulled out. We know now that you had briefed the presenter or the research team that you were prepared to answer this question. So it was a leading question you got to dismiss her publicly or throw her under the bus, as has been said. But now, Minister, going forward, how can you give confidence here, or what confidence can you give us, or indeed the public, who I think they've switched off from watching these anyway, because they're just pure patently disgusted with it, as they're disgusted with much of the content in RT. And I reiterate that I have sympathy for the vast majority of employees in RT, but the cabal at the top, what confidence can you give me and our committee here, to the chair, that you're going to be able to deal with this cabal? You have failed miserably since last July to do it. You just feel to be weak at all junctures, and successive governments have done so as well. So What confidence can you give us that you're able to deal with this cabal? Because that's what it is now, a cabal. And I think Mr. Backus' position is untenable as well. I find it hard to think that you could say he sat there and didn't advise or notice to Mr. O'Reilly and say, look, you're misinforming the minister there, and you still have confidence in him and haven't in the other. So where's this leading, and what confidence can you give us that you're going to be able to deal with this cabal?
I've confidence in meeting with the board on Friday. I have confidence that we can find a path forward. It's a very future-looking meeting that we intend to have. I have confidence in the reforms that are taking place, and I have confidence that when we receive the expert advisory committee recommendations that will be implemented. I don't think it's fair to say that as a sweeping statement. I think I do not think that's fair.
I don't believe you have either, to be fair, if you're being honest.
I have absolute.
I don't believe you have, to the chair. I don't believe you have. How could you? When the DG sits there through a meeting where you're being misinformed by Mr. O'Reilly, as you've stated yourself, and he never opens his mouth. Bail Dunta.
I have confidence in the reforms that are underway, in the reforms that need to happen, but more importantly, the absolute value that we all have here on public service broadcasting. And
it's been eroded very fast, Minister, and you haven't helped. And most situations, through the chair, I've been involved in local authorities where members were appointed, or sorry, officials were appointed on where the local authorities amalgamated or collaborated with groups to achieve a sports complex or whatever, and the county council took a part in it. Small money, small investments, not in the hundreds of thousands, I mean tens of thousands maybe, rather than this multi-millions. And the minister or the county council as a body would always appoint an official in there or two, the board of 8 or 10. I sat beside them, excellent officials, and they were the watchdog for the public purse, for the county council, for the public investment. Why haven't you dedicated officials appointed, which you did appoint, to watch for the public purse? Where are they? Where's your duty there? Duty of care to the state and to the taxpayers' money.
That's why I've set up expert advisory committees to look at the staff data issues, to look at the culture and governance. Well, yeah. there are
I'm talking about the
regular
board.
meetings.
I'm talking about the board when you set it up first. After the fact now, when there's millions and millions and millions paid out in payments to people going out that won't come back and answer questions. I mean, lack of your ability here has to be seriously questioned. And your departments would advise you. Why hadn't you specific members on that board that were watching you to tell you the truth? They're passing your notes now, I see, furiously, but why wasn't somebody passing your notes beforehand or informing you? How has this let this fester and soar to be this appalling vista? What a mess. And we'll continue here with meetings and more meetings and more meetings, round and round the house and mind the dresser, and don't answer any questions. So the sooner that the fraud squad are brought in, the better. Why is RT being protected by the public, by you as minister and the government to face up to their tax liabilities? To be honest with their employees who want to earn money for their families, how is that allowed to continue, and how is this charade carrying on?
That's why I'm saying to you, Deputy, that these reports are key. As I pointed out to the committee on the last occasion, and a number of members brought up the issue of staff and equality and fairness. That's why a separate committee is dealing with the staff and HR issues, and the other one is on governance and culture. Obviously, I've now stated many times, what was there was dysfunctional.
And it still is very dysfunctional.
Just to conclude.
But I would say as well, it's not appropriate to put department officials on a board like that. But there are
So that's the note
oversight.
you got now. So how come we can put county council officials on boards to protect the taxpayers on small scale? It seems that this is, I said the last day, like the mind the chickens in the hen house and keep the door closed. Don't let in the fox. You don't want to see any fox. You want to carry on your merry-go-round with the media, public service broadcasting, that are beholding to the government and certain committee members here as well. We hear them morning, noon and night on interviews, but anyone who's alternative view was forgotten about. So it's not fair or right, and you're not able to control it. And you have no intention of trying to control it, because it suits the government narrative to let this cabal carry on.
Okay, Deputy McGuire, give the Minister an opportunity to respond, and we'll move on.
Absolutely determined. I think part of the problem here has been consecutive governments not grasping the nettle of putting RTE on a sustainable footing. But more important, It's not just about RT, and as many members here have raised, it's about the wider broadcasting and print sector, and that's why we have to move quickly and make this decision. But key to that is, if you're saying looking for the fox, is the expert advisory committees reports.
Committees, yeah.
No, but we're going to have that report.
Jobs for the bodies. And the same big corporate companies that give advice that's tainted and they're hired again. So the people can see through this. A blind person could see through what's going on. Cabal.
Deputy, we have to get the recommendations of these two expert groups.
You're the minister.
See them implemented.
You make decisions and let them deal with the fallout.
Deputy.
I rest my case, Chair. Because we're getting nowhere here.
We'll move on. Deputy Christopher O'Sullivan, the floor is yours and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister and team, for coming in today. Just coming back to the primetime interview on Thursday night, if that's okay. I just watched it back before coming in here again, just to kind of remind myself of how it went down and what was said. It did seem to me that you were very forthcoming with the answer when Mary McCallum put it to you about the role of the board in terms of oversight of exit packages and the fact that you've been misinformed by Mr. Raleigh. You were very forthcoming. You came straight out with it. In other words, it didn't have to be dragged out of you. Would that be fair?
I was trying to be as open and as transparent as possible in relation to this.
Okay. In terms of that conversation, I suppose, that was had with the researcher prior to going on air and going live, did you kind of agree a wording that Miriam would put you in terms of the question that would be put to you about the knowledge of the board and the oversight, or was it kind of teed up in a certain way that you would have felt comfortable with?
Well, actually, I think I was in getting makeup on, I believe it was in relation to flagging that an issue is probably about to break in relation to the board, and that I'm happy to, or I'm willing to address that if needs be.
Okay, so it wasn't kind of teed up, there wasn't an agreed warming or there wasn't an agreed wording, it wasn't that, look, if you ask me this way, I'll respond in a certain way. It was just that it was flagged with you that
it was flagged that there's an issue with the board, and I'm willing to address it.
Do you regret now being so open and honest, I suppose, about it, and being so forthcoming with the information live on air, considering what's happened since?
I think the other side is if I hadn't been, then I'd be accused of the opposite. And it was a very difficult situation. So if I'm trying to seek that openness and that transparency, and I don't reveal what I know has just emerged in the last few hours, how does that work for someone who's seeking openness?
I know, but you look, we're all politicians are accused of being experts at evading questions, and that accusation is given to us quite often, which is fair enough.
Maybe that's a problem, that we shouldn't be evading those questions all the time.
Perhaps.
I was trying in this particular issue, when the entire crisis has been about covering things up. I was
perhaps,
trying
and that's potentially a different debate.
I can't choose when I want to be.
Let me put it to you this way: would it have been better when the question was put to you, but to give detail about conversations with Mr. Raleigh and the fact that you were misinformed? Would it have been better to kind of say, look, listen, information is more emerging here, very, very important information. It necessitates a meeting with the board, or the chair of the board, then chair of the board, Sinead Raleigh. That meeting is happening tomorrow, and there will be a full statement on matters after that meeting happens. Would that have been a better way to progress? I know it's not that transparency and openness that you say is so important in politics, but would it have been a kind of would there have been less of a consequence if you went down that line and said, something has emerged here, it's concerning, we need to get clarification on it, there's a meeting set up for tomorrow, and I would be making a full statement after that. Would that have been preferable, do you think?
There was other ways my confidence had been rocked, in that the former chair had indicated during the day that they felt they shouldn't meet me. They felt actually that I shouldn't even write a letter never mind request a meeting. And that sort of shook my confidence too.
So after you had found out that you'd been misinformed on both the Coveney and Collins's exit packages, you requested this meeting with Siún Rallig prior to the primetime interview, and she declined that meeting, or she said it shouldn't happen?
It was indicated to the former chair that my most likely action would be that I would write a letter or an email.
Seeking a meeting, or?
Just at that stage, it was just indicated a letter would be written because I felt it was significant. No other, because I was just, when the official came back to me, I said, this is not good. I've received inaccurate information on a number of occasions. And it was indicated that I would write a letter. And the former chair was not willing to receive a letter.
How did that communication happen? Was that
through an official?
Phone calls? Okay.
Yeah.
She wasn't willing to receive a letter, or she felt that would, okay, that's extraordinary.
That's quite problematic from a confidence point of view if the chair is unwilling to receive a letter from the minister.
Do you think she would have been unwilling to meeting, or had she actually agreed to the meeting on the Friday at the point you went on with prime time?
Later on, as phone calls progressed in the day, I had it indicated to her that not only would I write a letter, but I wanted to meet. She indicated she felt she would not come to a meeting, but I was still hoping.
Had she changed her mind, or had she agreed to the meeting?
No.
She hadn't actually agreed to meet you?
Well, the email was sent out that evening.
Okay. Look, I know that obviously you felt that she'd been misinformed 3 times. There was when she didn't inform you about the resignation of D-Forbes, or that she sought D-Forbes, or that she sought the resignation. There was the instance in terms of the Coveney exit package. There was the incidents in terms of Mr. Collins' exit package. I know your sport is within your department. Baseball isn't very widely played in Ireland, but is it a case of 3 strikes and you're out?
It's a case of you need, as minister, as I've said, to be able to rely on accurate information. And it's getting to a stage where I wasn't able to rely on accurate information. As I said, the Monday there was a question, but the Wednesday I really led with the question because of the letter I'd received on the Wednesday.
After the Monday, in terms of the Coveney exit package and the misinformation, she corrected that. Had you kind of given her prior warning, or had you said, listen, this is the second time now I felt that you've misinformed me. If this happens again, we're going to have a serious conversation.
Well, I did say I have to be in possession of the facts. You have to keep me informed.
Right. You were asked to express confidence in her. Was there any other way that I suppose that you could have got out of that question? That was a tricky question. There was this big shadow hanging over the whole situation. You just shared information that she wasn't willing to receive a letter. Do you just feel that you couldn't have said I have full confidence at that point?
I think you've said you've looked back on it. It was really a case of me. I was trying in every possible way. I don't know how many times I was asked that question, but I was trying in every possible way not to say I'd no confidence.
Did you genuinely not foresee the resignation?
She was indicating she might resign if I sent a letter.
Okay.
But I was just hopeful that she'd reflect and think about having a meeting with me.
Okay, so that potential resignation was there. You were informed that if you were going to send a letter, that there could potentially be a resignation coming. Okay, that's interesting. Well, in terms of
Deputy, I can't be in a position where I have to make a judgment call on whether I should send a letter or not, and I can't change my mind because someone's saying.
Even after what's transpired in terms of the amount of times that Mr. Rallig, you felt has misinformed you, do you regret that she's gone? Would you like if she was still in place?
I wish I hadn't been given the inaccurate information. I wish I was in a position to be able to say to you, I'm fully confident not only of how of her hard work and of her commitment to the reform in RT, but I'm fully confident that I'll always be in possession of the full facts when I ask questions. And unfortunately, the last piece I couldn't. And
so do you think this is the right outcome, that she's gone, or would you prefer she was still chair of the board?
Obviously, I thought she was a great chair, but the crucial piece is I have to be in possession of the facts.
So
there was a question mark over that, but I would
Sounds
have
to me like you think
I would have
it's the right
preferred
outcome.
if we had the opportunity on Friday to talk it through.
Just in relation to the knowledge of the department, I'm very uncertain about this in terms of the fact in Ms. New statement she says, I informed the department about the process which led to the Richard Collins departure from RTE on October 10th, one day after it was approved. Is that accurate?
So on the first phone call, I think on the Thursday, you might have them there, on the first phone call on the Thursday, there was, last week, I'll get around to your question, the official was told that, I think that was early in the morning, that I'd been given incorrect information. And the former chair said that she had made an error, that she now recalled that not only had that the board, she had said that the board had no role whatsoever, but actually she had chaired the remuneration committee that had approved it. And the official came back to me and told me this, and I found it hard to believe because of the extent of the question I had done earlier that week. So I asked the official to go back and say, but surely it wasn't approved, because it was said on so many occasions. And that phone call, and I think it was flagged that I was considering writing to her at that stage. And she again expressed regret at the error, and then said that she had phoned the former Secretary General last October to say that a deal had been done with the legal team, and she said she imagined that she would also have referred to the role of the Remuneration Committee in that conversation. The language used was that she imagined that she would have referred to the role of the Remuneration Committee in that conversation.
Is there any documentation with any of your department officials in your belief, which informed of the oversight role that the board had in Mr. Collins' departure?
Not at the time of Mr. Collins' departure. So the only documentation, and again I would expect to receive this in a formal way from the chair, was September the 5th. We had received a letter updating us of reforms underway and planned, and with that was an annex, and it didn't mention the role of approval in terms of
Deputy.
Yeah, to conclude, look, I think there's further delving to be done there in terms of the knowledge from the department. But look, just a closing comment, Minister, in my view, this entire mess since June, coming right through to now, it's certainly not of your making. But it is still a mess, and it's RTE, unfortunately, is it's in bits, it's in pieces, and it badly needs to be thrown a lifeline. The staff deserve it. People of Ireland deserve a proper functioning public broadcasting service, and the sooner that we draw a line under all of this, the better, so that we can move on. People are tired of it, and it's high time that this process of rebuilding, which is supposed to be well underway, finally starts. Thank you, Chair.
Deputy Sullivan.
If I can just respond?
Yeah.
Just to say, I am absolutely focused on that, and in working with the board, in working with the DG, working with yourselves as committee, and I think key to that is the government making a decision for once and for all on a future funding model that will be sustainable for all public service media.
Thank you very much. I'm calling on Deputy Alan Dillon. The floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes.
Thanks, Catherine, and thanks, Minister, for joining us along with your officials. Certainly the past few days have been nothing short of extraordinary, and for the wrong reasons, may I say. Once again, we have the RTE drama escalating into another fiasco. Can I just ask, firstly, Minister, at what point did you begin to doubt the capacity of the former chair to lead the board and to initiate the much needed change and reforms within RTE?
It's only in the last week, to be honest, Deputy. I know there was an error in the early days of this in a committee hearing, but I really felt I'd give the benefit of the doubt for stability reasons in relation to not being informed of the resignation or for seeking the resignation of Dee Forbes. But just in the last week, it was because of the line of questioning was so direct, and to not. And again, I'm saying I don't believe it was intentional in any shape or form.
Do you not think she was worth persisting with?
Well, see, it gets to a stage where if you're asking direct questions on many occasions in a week and you're not getting the accurate information.
She was a woman of integrity, a woman of vast experience. She had presided over the RTE debacle for the past 15 months. Was the writing on the wall for her before the primetime interview? And
I don't disagree with you in relation to her being a woman of integrity and the sheer commitment and dedication she gave in the last 15 months. I'm not disputing that in any shape or form. I absolutely agree with you. But as the Minister for Media, as I said, I must be able to rely and feel absolutely confident that I'm getting all the facts, and especially when I'm probing for these facts on numerous occasions. And if I'm not receiving it, I don't know how you expect the Minister for Media then to be able to operate
Minister,
when you can't rely on accurate information.
Minister, you said that you were shocked that RTE Primetime were aware of the information that was withheld by the chair. Have you initiated any inquiry into how RTE Primetime got that information?
No, I didn't say that. I said when on my approach to Primetime, I became aware of other journalists having this information, and I don't understand how they got it. It's not something that I wanted out there. I wanted to definitely have the opportunity to talk to the then chair without that.
Okay, and can I ask, are conversations with you, the DG and the chair held in a private capacity?
No, my officials are with me.
Okay, so there was how many people in the room during the two meetings last week?
4, 5, 6 of us.
So do you,
and the DG and chair.
Do you feel that there was a complete failure in relation to the duties of all parties who attended that meeting to protect the information that was in that meeting and the questions that were asked?
Oh, well, no. What emerged to journalists was what happened on the Thursday, when the record was corrected that I'd been given the incorrect information on Monday and Wednesday.
On Monday and Wednesday?
Yeah, so that emerged on the Thursday. So I think everything was protected on the Monday and Wednesday, because as far as we were concerned at the end of Wednesday, we had all the correct information.
Have you asked the question how they actually obtained that information? Because certainly in your statement you say that you were scheduled for prime time to discuss the legal advice and also the public funding model, but something significantly changed.
No, what I said, it wasn't primetime journalists who were telling me that the news was going to break. It was other journalists outside RTE who were telling me the news was about to break.
So why did you even speak about the chair of RTE at that interview, during that interview?
Because I felt to be transparent that it needed to be flagged that there was an issue about to break, and I was willing to speak to it.
But you didn't have all the factual, accurate information at that time?
In relation to what, Deputy?
In relation to the press statements that were released on Friday from both the board, from the chair in her resignation letter, and also from the DG. Because subsequently on the Friday we had multiple press releases clarifying the situation and the discrepancy around what your department knew, what the actual chair knew, what the DG knew, and what the board knew.
Well, I knew what had happened on the Monday and Wednesday. And I knew that in those meetings, the chair had said she had no role whatsoever. I knew that in those meetings, she'd actually spoken in the future tense, that in future, the reforms mean that we will in future have a role in approvals. So she actually clarified the fact not only was she giving the information, we certainly, did not have any role in this in any shape or form, but in future, the Remuneration Committee will have a role.
You said in your opening statement that it indicates that you didn't receive any formal communication. Can I ask, when previously did you receive formal communication on any issues in relation to the changes that were being implemented or the reforms that were being implemented into RTE?
On September 5th, I've mentioned a letter that I received from the chair with in relation to reforms that were underway or planned, and there was an annex with that. It did not include a reference to severance packages.
Are they email, are they phone call, are they written?
That's an email directly to me.
Can I ask, just in relation to your officials, in September 2023 the department received the new terms of reference introduced for the RT Remuneration Committee. Is that correct?
No.
So that was never received?
No. It was received in December, or November 30th, December 1st.
Were they questions that should have been asked by your officials or yourself, Minister, in relation to the Public Accounts Committee hearing in September that discussed the provisions around terms, around pay and conditions that must be approved by the committee, and that these measures were a broader set of actions aimed at strengthening controls and fully restoring public trust in RTE's corporate governance? Because you were presiding over a massive bailout for RTE at that time.
You're referring to the PAC meeting in October?
Yep.
Well, as I said earlier, I think, that was very much rooted in the future tense, as in it will now present a report, it will report, so it was future tense. And again, at that point, it's of that PAC meeting, it's 2 days after the Mr. Collins had left, that it was announced that he had left RTE. There was no reason to believe anything other than the DG had made that decision.
But before you issued a bailout in the October budget, did you check to see what checks and balances RTE had in place? Did you look for any clarification in relation to the conditions of issuing a massive bailout to the tune of 40 million to RTE?
Well, it's New Era that do that work. As you know, that they've been brought under New Era. That's one of the Future of Media Commission recommendations, and New Era made the recommendation to us on the amount to give RTE.
But in terms of the current lie of the land within RTE, did you look for any of the actual reforms to see what the Remuneration Committee was doing in relation to restructuring?
But it's New Era that will do that. What we've said in relation to the €40 million, none of that has been given out yet. And we said none of it will be given out until the check and balances of the reforms that we see what is taking place.
Can I ask, when did you become aware of Rory Coveney's resignation deal involved an exit package?
In the committee hearing on February the 14th. And then I read that weekend that there was...
And why do you think RTE didn't inform you that there was an exit package assigned to that resignation?
That's why I asked on that. I would have been aware from a meeting on July 6th, I think it was, that the DG had indicated he was intending to restructure the team. Then I was informed that Rory Coveney had resigned, and it was my understanding he had resigned. But then in the committee hearing on February 14th, it emerged that it was a package.
Did you ask at the time?
That is one of the questions I asked the chair, because I was looking for transparency in that meeting in relation to transparency. I asked, had she any knowledge that it was an exit package? Because I presumed she hadn't, or I would have been told. And she admitted then that she forgot to tell me that it was a pretty hectic time, and she forgot to tell me.
And would you say that the non-disclosure of this deal has led to a suspicion of mistrust?
No, what I've said is that again is it's about me receiving the accurate information, and that was again a case where I didn't receive.
A big issue here is that, and RT are guilty of it as well, is that if you don't ask the right questions, you don't get the information.
But again, the understanding in July is certainly that that is an operational matter for the DG, and that it was a straightforward resignation. That's what I was told, and it's an operational matter for the DG. So that's the line that I don't cross, which I've been very consistent on all through these 8 months.
One final question, Chair. Just to ensure maximum transparency, you've referenced it a few times. Will you expedite the publication of the aggregate exit packages to be published by RTE, which will be included in their annual audit?
I've asked for that, and even last Thursday that was one of the conversations that was had. I asked the officials to follow up on the Monday and Wednesday meetings and asked for them to pursue that.
And is it forthcoming?
I'm waiting for them to get back. I think they were checking with their auditors, but we want to get it ahead, if possible, definitely ahead of, instead of having to wait to see it, like we will all see it in the summer. I think it'd be very helpful to get that as soon as possible.
Thank you, Minister.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm conscious that we're coming up to almost half time, if you like, and Minister, I'll bring in Deputy Fitzpatrick first, and if you need a short break afterwards, we'll allow for yourself and your officials to do that. But in the meantime, if I could call on Deputy Fitzpatrick, the floor is yours and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Minister and our officials for coming in this evening. First of all, prime time last Thursday night, I don't believe you should have called it off. I think you've done the right thing going to prime time, because you said the agenda was basically to do with the future funding and legal advice. But then you said that you received information on your way to prime time. Can I ask you a question? What information did you receive?
That there are press queries coming in. Somehow people had found out that I had been misinformed during the week, and it was going to be revealed.
And was it specifically to do with Shirley O'Reilly? Was it just how? Nothing else, just how?
That I had been misinformed during the week.
Yeah. Did you ring the DG before prime time, or did you ring the DG after prime time, or did you not ring the DG at all?
I didn't ring the DG.
I just think that what happened in prime time should never happen in prime time. I'm a former employer myself, and I'm just looking at your statement. And in fairness, if I was going to employ someone, and the reference you've given your statement is unbelievable, because you said, I would like to put on record again the significant contribution that Miss Nia O'Reilly has made over the past 15 months. Her commitment to transforming RTE was obvious, and I want to offer genuine thanks for her hard work. First of all, you mentioned the word genuine, you mentioned hard work, you mentioned commitment, you mentioned transforming. To me, that's someone that you have a lot of respect and everything else for. And she's been there for the last 15 months. Like, to me, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, it seems like you've thrown her under the bus, or you made her a scapegoat. Like, that this woman has worked for you for the last 15 months. And do you honestly believe that by giving a no vote confidence to her last Thursday night, that she wasn't going to do what she does? Like, do you think what you've done, if prime time was on this Thursday night and you'd go for the same meeting, would you say the same thing about your chairperson?
I think it's important to tell the truth, and if a person, and I put all that in record in the statement because I absolutely believe it, in being genuine, in being hardworking, in being dedicated. There's no dispute over that. And as I said earlier so many times, I do not believe this was intentional. But if a chair is asked a question on many occasions from a minister and they can't be certain of the answer, and again they're asked to double check and triple check, and you're getting the inaccurate information, unfortunately, no matter how genuine and hardworking and committed that individual is, and with absolute certainty the former chair was, the problem is I'm not getting, as minister, I'm not getting the accurate information. and if a minister isn't getting the accurate information and that's the direct line, then that is an issue. I must have full confidence that I'm getting reliable information. I must be absolutely sure that I'm getting accuracy of information and communications. That's of paramount importance, and I'd say even more so when you're dealing with a crisis.
Does the Director General have confidence in her? Did you ever ask him, had he confidence in her?
I believe they work
I'm asking
very
a
well
question.
to her.
Did the DG ever tell you that he had full confidence in her?
I don't know if that exact question was ever asked, but I think he definitely came across to me as someone who had confidence in her. But there's a difference between the connection between the DG and the chair and government through the Minister of Media.
Have you got a good relationship with the DG?
Yes. And I would have said I had a good relationship with the chair.
No, I'm coming to that. So you had a good relationship with the DG. When you were heading to prime time, could you not lift your phone up to the person that you had a good relationship with and ask them the question? There's something seriously wrong here at the moment, and we're going in circles here all night at the moment. Like you've given the lady a fantastic reference. You said the DG had confidence in her. I think if you've been pushed hard enough, there's something wrong here, and I just can't put my finger on here at the moment. For example, how much was she getting paid?
It's 35,000.
So basically, it was a part-time job, a big job in OTE, a part-time job for 31,000. And the DG, I was said earlier on, getting hundreds of thousands. Well, if I was in your position, right, and I had a good relationship with my DG, I would actually lift the phone up and say, listen, I'm going to prime time here this evening. I've got this information, and what do you think? Because you're his boss. Bosses do ring the employees and find out information. I'm
not his boss. That's the point. I am not the DG's boss. My direct line to RTE is via the chair. I am not the boss of the Director General of RTE. There is no direct line there.
Right.
That's the point.
Sorry. Right. You're the boss of RTE, right? Who's your first port of call?
The chair.
A part-time worker is your first protocol.
Yes, that's under the broadcasting
Right, okay. Let's go another ways. Right, she's your first protocol. Why didn't you ring her?
Because I felt the issue was of significance.
Were you trying to cover yourself, no?
No, I really feel if something like this emerges, it needs a face-to-face meeting with the officials who were in the meeting with me when I was given the incorrect information. And I certainly didn't want a phone call where, you'd be relying on who said what to who there, I needed, in this particular circumstance, I felt it was really important that the people who had been in the room with me on all the occasions last week that I asked these questions were again in the room with me when I asked the question again, what went wrong.
Had you no time between going to prime time and ringing the chairperson? Had you no time to ring her?
As I said to you, I didn't think it should be a phone call.
No, but you said, you could have rang her and said, listen, can you meet me?
There wasn't the time. I was arriving. I was actually nearly late for prime time as the clock was ticking down.
Do you think it's a mistake your number one contact in RTE is the chairperson? Is that a mistake?
That's how it's defined under
No, I'm
the
asking
Act.
the Minister, and I will be honest, I have a very good time for you. But I'm just asking a simple question is, do you think a part-time person who's getting 31,000 a year for doing a job, right? There's something, to me, there's something seriously wrong at the moment is. Like for someone who's been paid over 200,000, the Director General, and then a lady getting paid 31,000, I would be dead straight with you. If I was getting 31,000 and getting I won't use the word I was going to use is getting the flag and all that. She was, to me, she was the scapegoat. She was the lady that was thrown underneath the bus. Like the person should be taking all the responsibility is the person, the Director General. So have you any plans going forward of changing the organisation around that the right person, maybe I'm wrong in saying it, you shouldn't be going to a part-time worker and asking a part-time worker. Like, I've been own business for nearly 20 years at the moment is. I wouldn't ask someone coming in part-time. It'd be the person who would be running the ship and doing all the business and everything else. There's something seriously wrong here at the moment is that the number one person in OTE is part-time and being paid, I won't say peanuts, but it's being paid 31,000. There's something seriously wrong here at the moment.
It's not just the case for RTE, that is the case for state boards.
Sorry,
That's
sorry.
how they operate.
We'll just talk, I'm not being smart, this has gone on a long time. I will be honest with you, the amount of time this has gone on for the last months and months and months, every time you think you're finished, something else happens, you know what I mean? Like, but having a person, head of OTE, and I will be honest with you, I don't know anything about the lady at all, and I'm sure she's very, very good, and I'm sure she's very, like as I said, if you give me a copy of your statement here this evening, I'd give her a job because the reference you give her is actually a very, very good reference. But yet again, she's made a scapegoat here at the moment. She's gone. The meetings we have at the moment with her and that there's no written. It's all by phones and everything else at the moment. Have you any way of following up any statements that was made over the last number of days and such? Because there doesn't seem to be any records of it there at the moment. Everything's hearsay or by phone and everything else at the moment. I honestly do think, Minister, you made a major mistake. As I said here there's no problem going on to prime time because you had your agenda. But I just think the way it was handled, I think she was made a scapegoat. She was thrown under the bus. I don't think what happened to her is very, very fair. You told me you have confidence in her. Director General is confident in her. But how come she's gone? Because what you said last week there at the moment is you had no confidence in her. Like, your boss is Eamon Ryan. Is Eamon Ryan your boss or is a different change of command? But what I'm trying to say at the moment is if Eamon Ryan was up there in the door and he said, I have no confidence in Minister Catherine Martin, I'm sure you'd be the first person to leave the party and everything else. So what happened, the chairperson of OTE was absolutely and utterly wrong. I do believe, and I'm not calling you a liar, Minister, I have too much respect for you, but I do believe that the statement you made on prime time by showing no confidence in her, you left her with no option but to leave. And I think it's very, very unfair that someone being paid $31,000 a year to be chairperson of OTE, the Director General has confidence in her, you have confidence, everybody's confident in her. So I just can't understand why she was thrown under the bus.
I never stated I had no confidence. I was trying in every possible way not to say that.
Sorry. You asked a question, right? The same way we're asking you questions. You asked the questions, had you confidence in her, and you hadn't. Well, listen, you don't have any problem giving her a reference. Everybody is confident in her, and you asked the question. And I can't understand why you didn't turn around and say, listen, even before the conversation started you could have turned around and said, listen, I got a bit of news here this evening. I have to talk to my chairperson tomorrow morning and I'll be making a statement after I meet my chairperson. To me, that was the best way of it, instead of throwing her under the bus. And in fairness, you did throw her under the bus. The same way, if Eamon Ryan, the leader of your party, turned around and said he had no confidence in you, I guarantee you'd be the first one to leave the Green Party because you had no confidence. And as I said to you, if Eamon Ryan had given you the reference that you've given, you've given a fantastic reference. You've done everything. And I will be honest with you, I don't know how you're going to fill the role of the chairperson because you've said everything nice about her, and next thing she's gone. And the next job of chairperson, it's not going to be a part-time job as well, or it's going to be a full-time job. Also, what kind of reform are you going to do?
Thank you, Deputy Fitzpatrick. Thank you.
Can you just answer that question, please?
Anything you want to say to that, or are you happy with
Just that, as I said before, it was a very difficult situation, but I felt, I had information from that day that I don't, as I said, I'd be here for other reasons if I had concealed what I had known. And I tried in every way I didn't say I have no confidence. I tried in every way to not say that when I was being pressed. But as Minister, I have to promote and protect and practice transparency. Obviously, if a pattern is developing where I can't rely on information, and it looks like someone doesn't even want to receive a letter from a minister, that's problematic.
Minister, can I ask at this point, we're halfway through, do you need a break or your officials need a break, or are you happy to continue?
I'm happy to go.
You happy to continue, colleagues? Everybody happy to continue? Yeah? Okay, well, thank you very much, and we will do our best to keep it moving. We're halfway there. So, Senator Malcolm Bourne, the floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes.
And Minister, thank you and your officials for coming before us. But I think we'd all rather be here under different circumstances. We're spending 3 hours discussing a prime time programme and the fallout from it. And I think I'd much rather be talking about whether it's the broader issue of the future of media and public service funding, or even other areas in your brief. And as I think I've been a strong supporter of yours in other areas in terms of your record on inclusion in sport and your support for the arts. And you have been proactive in this area with regards to ensuring that there were inquiries into RTE around the issues of governance and around the issues of culture. Although I do, and I think I don't believe that you should have done the primetime interview, and I do think it was unfortunate what happened. Can I ask, we know how much time our committee is spending on this. You have a pretty large brief. Roughly what proportion of your time do you spend on RTE?
In recent months?
In the last 9 months?
Yeah. It's hard to quantify. It's
as a proportion, roughly. I mean, you have a pretty large brief.
As certain issues emerge, it can absolutely dominate.
But would it be fair to say that a quarter of your...
this week, it's absolutely dominating.
Okay. And the concern is obviously that's the interest. How often would you have had contact with the chair since last July? Would it have been on a weekly basis? Would it be... And would these be just occasional phone calls, or would they be regular meetings?
Yeah. I have monthly meetings. And then there'd be ongoing contact with the officials.
With the officials.
And if there's anything of real significance, then it would be an email directly to me or a phone call directly to me.
So it'd be fair to say you would have had monthly engagements, a formal sit-down meeting, and then your officials would have been regularly. It's probably fair to say that, during certain weeks, you're probably talking to the chair 3, 4, 5 times a week.
Yeah, well, you can see last week, in just relation to the legal advice, there were 3 meetings with the chair,
okay.
And then phone calls on top of that.
And you've indicated that you had a pretty good working relationship, obviously, with the chair and the team there. Could I ask? And we've seen, the catastrophe that was in many ways inherited by the former chair and the current DG that was out there in RT. Are you and were you broadly happy with the direction in which the Director General and the Chair had been bringing the organisation? I totally acknowledge they made missteps, and our committee would be as critical of them, but broadly speaking, are you happy with the direction in which they're taking RTE?
Yes, I was, yes.
Okay. Because I have to say, and I'm disagreeing with some colleagues here, I have confidence in Kevin Backhurst. I don't agree with everything necessarily. I think he has made some missteps, but I think it is important from this committee to say, in the interests of the staff that are there, and also in the interests of the independent production sector, but indeed for public service broadcasting, at the end of all of this, we need an RTE that functions. And I want to see Kevin Backhurst to be able to do his job well. You will be aware, Minister, that obviously the relationship between the Chair and DG is also crucial, as indeed is the relationship between the Chair and Minister. And that is important. Could I ask, do you, looking back on last week, do you consider it to be a breakdown in communications or a breakdown in trust?
It's hard to explain it because it's purely that I reached a place where I couldn't, as I said, I just felt I couldn't depend on the information that I was receiving. Again, I say I do not believe that was intentional. I don't know why it was happening, but I wasn't getting the inaccurate information, but I don't believe it was intentional.
Okay, so it was getting to a pretty difficult situation. I can't accept, Minister, that you'd go on prime time not expecting the question, do you have confidence in the Chair? I'm pretty certain that whoever would have advised you would have said to you in advance, are you prepared for this question?
As I said, I can't predict the questioning, and as I said, I really didn't want this to happen on air, but, you know, and that's why I was trying not to go there in relation to the confidence, but this was really about not getting accurate information.
Okay, so I want to come back to questions that my colleague, Deputy Christopher Sullivan, was asking earlier, where, and it seems to be where, if you like, your confidence was broken, was around this issue where you had serious concerns around the information that was made available, and you had said to Siún Ní Raghallaigh as chair that you were going to put those concerns in a letter to Siún Ní Raghallaigh as chair, and Siún Ní Raghallaigh effectively said if you send that letter, she threatened to resign. Am I correct in that interpretation?
Yes.
Okay. So,
and there was no indication even of a meeting at that stage.
Okay, but
that's what has conveyed to me. That was a phone call. Which
is that not effectively the case then, Minister, that the chair had basically said, I am going to resign?
I was hoping that was just a rash comment, because I couldn't understand how someone would try and tell the minister how to manage their work. I just found it, I was flabbergasted.
Yeah, but I appreciate that, Minister. But if the chair was to say to you, you know, if you send me this letter, I'm going to resign. I mean, surely at that stage you knew, right, that was it.
I really could think, and I thought it was just maybe a rash comment, because it didn't make sense. Just to send a letter to say that there are issues emerging from you given, you know, unfortunately you give inaccurate information.
But your chair came back to you and said, you know, if you send that letter, I'm going to resign. I suppose I'm asking, what is the point of having the meeting on the Friday morning if the chair had already indicated she was going to resign?
Because it was so astounding of a comment. I couldn't believe that anyone would just refuse to meet and to be afforded the opportunity to talk. So I was hoping that the former chair wouldn't do that.
Would you not? I mean, I appreciate you're saying so astounding, but I mean, ultimately you said, you know, the chair is your linking reports to you. But if it's so astounding, would you not just say, well, this is it, this is the end of the relationship?
I wanted to afford an opportunity because as I've stated in the statement, because she was so genuine, hardworking and committed, I wanted to afford her opportunity. How could you have got this so wrong?
But would there been, I mean, clearly then what you're telling us is that, and this was where I come to the question of a breakdown in communication and a breakdown in trust. I mean, essentially what you're telling us is there was a breakdown in trust. If there's a breakdown in communication, look, that happens quite often, there can be clarity. But here you're saying there's something astounding was said to you by the chair. The chair was saying, you send a letter and I'm going to resign. I just wonder then, what was the point of the Friday morning meeting if effectively it was either a case of that the chair had more or less said she was resigning, or in a sense it was constructive dismissal, which is what a lot of us would argue happened on the primetime programme?
Because I was still remaining hopeful that maybe that was just something that was said in the heat of the moment, and that she would take time to think about it and would come in, because the chair that I had dealt with for the last 8 months, I didn't think that was typical of the behaviour. And
but
likewise, I felt I could depend on the information that I was being given in recent months, and I couldn't understand what had happened last week, and I just wanted to talk it through.
But Minister, you'd said earlier that, you know, there were a number of instances where you didn't feel that you were getting accurate information. So, you know, to suddenly come to this conclusion, I just kind of find difficult. Can I ask, did it occur to you, obviously given the close relationship between the Director General and the support of the board, which has now been evident for the chair, did it occur to you that there was a serious risk that the Director General and the board could have resigned on foot of your primetime interview?
I'm delighted that they have stayed in place and that we're going to meet on this week. But I have to act in a way where, you know, if I don't have the accurate information, if there are problems there, then I have to query that, and I had to correct the public record too, because on foot of being given the incorrect information on Monday, I clarified it for the chair because she hadn't clarified it. And that's why I went out on Monday, because there seemed to be confusion. I don't know why this hasn't been clarified. And I said, well, I will do it now that I have the correct information.
So just that I know you've indicated full confidence in the Director General of RT and the direction he's taking the organisation. You have full confidence in the board of RT as well?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I wanted just two quick questions, which are kind of the future issues. One, obviously, is the intention to appoint a new chair. If you might indicate to us that our discussions going on, whether he or she will be an interim chair or if there's a decision to have a full-time, part-time chair in place, and when that appointment may be made. And then secondly, which I think is the bigger picture issue here, when do you intend to bring a paper to Cabinet with regard to the future funding model?
On the chair, I would like to move to appoint a full-time chair. So the board met last week and they said they will have a rotating chair until we have the full-time chair in place, and I'd like to move on that, if I can, within the week. And otherwise, we are looking at that in relation to the.
You are. I'm correct. Then you're sounding out individuals at the moment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we're active on that in consultation with senior members of Cabinet, and in relation to
the future funding model.
Future funding. I'm waiting for the reports. The expert advisory committees. I've always said that. They're due in March. I want to move as soon as possible. I've always said I feel that should be done before the summer. The sooner the better.
Well, I think we would certainly share that view, and I think so. We should see April or May. We will see.
That's what I would wish to happen. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Byrne. I'm now going to call on Deputy Brendan Griffin. The floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, have you ever picked up the phone in the past and called Siúnni Rathillig?
In the past?
Yeah. Have you ever picked up the phone and called?
To ring her in the last 8 months or so, yes.
How often?
Whenever there's real issues of concern, key moments in.
But it would have happened
in the development of the story.
But like a few times a week, a few times a month.
No, it wouldn't be a few times a week. That's the officials would talk a few times a week, and I would try and meet once a month.
You'd feel at liberty to pick up the phone and call her if issues arose.
If there was an issue, then I would feel I should pick up the phone to her.
Text and WhatsApp?
No, don't text or WhatsApp.
No, text or WhatsApp, no. Okay. When it emerged that this
unless, I think on one occasion, where you press text me, I'm busy, that automatic one,
okay.
But that's about it.
But on this occasion, it was emerging that this was a very serious situation, and you didn't feel it warranted you picking up the phone and phoning the chair?
I didn't think so. I thought it required a face-to-face meeting, as I said, because these conversations had happened in front of my officials. I felt it was really important, and there was now a question mark over what had been said repeatedly to me. I thought it really warranted having the officials there. Okay. And because during the course of Thursday that the language was used that she imagined she had told the former SecGen, that made me even more cautious about phone calls.
Is the draft of the letter that you were talking about, was the letter drafted?
It was sent.
It was sent.
Yeah.
Have you a copy of that available you could furnish to the committee?
Yes.
Okay. And in that letter, did you call for her resignation?
No. I asked to meet her on the Friday morning at 10, be it virtual or in person.
So now, earlier you said that the story was about to break. Now, it's hard to imagine how anyone else could have known about it because there was such a small circle of people. Mm-hmm. Will you investigate how that could be known?
Well, it was with ourselves, and of course I'd informed the chiefs of staff as well. Okay,
and can you tell me, you claimed earlier that RTE Primetime weren't aware of this story about to break?
No.
So why did you give them the scoop on the air?
Because as I was approaching Montrose, I was aware that it was about to break, and I felt I had to be open on it.
But given the sensitivity of the situation...
I wasn't sure if...
Given the sensitivity of the situation, you were live on air. You didn't have to tell this story because, you didn't tell us about the letter or you didn't tell us about the threatened resignation. So why did you tell us this particular aspect of the information?
because I felt if I hadn't, as I said earlier, if I hadn't, then I'd be here before committee
But there were lots of
for
things you
not
didn't tell
telling the
us.
truth.
You didn't tell us lots of things that we found out tonight. You didn't tell us that night, but you did tell us this particular thing.
Because I didn't want to reveal those things in relation to trying to protect her, because I was hoping in that case that she would change her mind.
But surely you knew that by going ahead with the interview and taking this line and revealing what you revealed, that given that the chair was in such a position leading into this interview, that there was no way back after this. Surely you must have known that. It's not credible that you wouldn't have deciphered that would have been the outcome.
As I said many times on that interview, I was really trying to afford her the opportunity to come in on the Friday. But I had gone out on public record on the Monday on foot of the information given to me, so it's important to correct the public record when you're in possession of new information.
Earlier you told us that it was important that you would give the full picture, but you actually didn't give the full picture at all. You didn't tell us about the letter. You didn't tell people about the resignation, about the other issues. You did, though, give us some information. So that's not a credible position. There's no consistency there, is there not?
Well, in relation to getting incorrect information, I felt that really needed to be told. In relation to sending the letter, I did reveal that I had sent a letter.
Prior to last Thursday, how many times have you appeared in prime time since taking office?
Not very many, but I had agreed. I had actually declined it 2 times, I think, in the last 2 months, and we had decided on the Tuesday that I would that I should come forward in relation to, because I've been calling for the transparency.
Yeah,
I was conscious in relation to RT. I was trying to leave key moments that had to do with the DG or reports, that it should be the DG that would speak to them. But I had signalled to the DG and to the former chair that they were doing media, they planned to do media, and that I would do the media at the end of the day.
I can only see 2 primetime appearances in nearly 4 years prior to last Thursday. And given that you were on the verge of something really huge here, did you not think that this was not the time to go ahead? And by the way, there was plenty to fill the programme. There was the Kerry drugs bus, there was the console issue, there were lots of things. So primetime weren't stuck for information. You'd only done it twice in almost 4 years. Why did you think it was necessary to go on last Thursday?
I'd given the commitment earlier, and because I wasn't able to do it in the previous month, I just felt I should go on.
Minister, a large tranche of documents were sent by RT to your department in late November, and I presume you've seen them?
Yes.
Okay, and amongst those documents were the new terms of reference for the Remuneration Committee. Did you see them?
Have I seen them? Yes. Yeah.
And your department informed you of them. You were furnished with them.
Sorry?
You were furnished with those documents.
We were furnished with them, I think it was with 16 other documents.
When? At that time when they were
No, not
received?
at that time. Because they weren't even signalled. It was in relation to a sort of a question and answer governance doc.
Okay. But it shouldn't have been any surprise to you or the department that the exit packages would be subject to oversight by the directors arising from those documents.
Arising from those documents?
Yeah.
They were received 2 months after Mr. Collins'
but
package.
prior to 10 days ago, when you read it in the media about the exit packages having been, and the involvement of the board, you would have known before that the terms of reference would have sent this out, correct?
Well, see, it hadn't been clear because we only received them 2 months after the
Yes,
package.
but you had them since November.
That's exactly why I had to ask the questions last week.
Why did it take
because
until
it
last
wasn't
week?
clear.
Well, no, sorry. Why did it take until last week to ask those questions? So if you had these documents since November, your department had them.
From the end of November, because it was not clear at all. Our understanding was that when the deal with Mr. Collins was done in early October, that the old terms of references applied and the board had no approval, because the only official formal notification we got of changes was from the chair to me. As I said, always key moments, the chair on key pieces of reform would email me.
The department had given it to you, the RT had given to you in writing, literally, what the procedure was.
Really, not clearly
Will you furnish those documents to the committee?
Yes, yeah.
Because you had these since the 30th of November.
The 30th of November, yes.
Okay. Can I ask, Minister, why here on the 28th of November did you tell me that your department had no decision, had no input in the question of the licence fee the advertising of the licence fee being stopped, when actually it had, and it had been informed?
But we've no role in that. We have no
Okay.
active role.
Why-
That's in
why
an information session.
Why, when I asked you, did you just surmise that the decision was based on maybe going down poorly with the public at the time?
I think I clearly said that day that there is no role for the department on this. This is a decision for RTE. Obviously, my officials meet regularly with RTE on post in relation to TV licence.
Okay, but why didn't your parliamentary replies?
It's not a decision.
Why didn't your parliamentary replies to me on this specific issue refer to that? Why did it take until last Friday, and until a reply from RTE yesterday, but a parliamentary reply from you last Friday, for you to actually correct the answer you had given me, that your department had been advised of this?
I think we said we weren't involved in deciding on it. My officials are not involved in the decision-making process, and that meeting is an information. We can't influence that.
But there is an operational forum operating, and none of your replies ever referred to that, even though I was asking specific questions. And you would have said that it's not something that would have been discussed with your department. You basically, what I'm pointing out to you here is there seems to be a dysfunctional miscommunication problem within the department, because even if written, I accept maybe in a committee if you don't have that information at hand, but in written responses, a number of written responses, none of this has been referred to. Until last Friday, it had to be dragged out of you, and only because Mr. Backhurst's information here on the February 14th was inconsistent with the information you had given me, both verbally and written. Why is that? Is that not indicative of a huge communication problem within your own department, and is that not part of the reason why we have this debacle that arose last Thursday?
No, that is an information sharing forum. We have no role whatsoever, and that's what I said in that committee, in influencing those decisions.
I asked you, were you aware at the time in the committee? I asked you, were you aware?
What I said was there were no discussions on it. What we've said to you is that it was conveyed, but it's not for us. And I think I said in the committee that is an editorial decision for RTE, which it is, and we cannot influence that in any shape or form.
But you could only surmise, so you weren't aware of the rationale behind this, even though we're talking €20 million here now lost since July. This is not small, this is big. And you told me you could only surmise. So were you not aware of this forum? Did your officials not inform you of it? Or is it something that's just recently came to your attention? Or did you know about it and convey false information here?
No, what I'm saying is you had various opinions on why it might have happened.
Specific questions. Very simple, black and white
I was
questions.
saying, it may have been tone deaf to have your ads on Kerry FM
Were you
and
aware
LMFM
of this
in
forum?
relation to the TV licence.
Were you aware of this forum?
Of course I know there's a forum that meets monthly.
When did you find out
but
about
it's
the forum?
Information. I know there's a forum.
When did you find out about it?
Because it's always been there.
But
So.
when did you find out, though? Did you know before you told me on the 28th of November what you told me?
Well, of course I know there's a forum, but it's an information sharing.
But you knew before the 28th of November that forum existed?
Yes, yeah.
But you neglected to inform me in numerous parliamentary replies and here in the committee about this forum that met. When I was specifically, now it was a lengthy discussion, and the officials around you as well were there. It was a lengthy discussion, and yes, you found it not important to tell me this.
Because I was pointing to the fact that it was an editorial decision for RTE, and that's what I said in the committee, that we have no role in it, and I'd still stand by that we have no role in it, because we can't influence that.
Would you at least accept that you were economic with the truth in terms of telling us what was going on?
That was not my intention, Deputy. I was just merely pointing to the fact that we have no role whatsoever in that. I thought that was my presumption of what you were trying to get to in the question. So that certainly wasn't my intention in any shape or form, Deputy.
And could you tell me, finally, Minister, have you had any subsequent contact with Siún Ní Raghallaigh since last Thursday?
I haven't.
No. And will you be having contact with her?
I don't imagine so, no.
And when was the last time you had contact with her?
In the third meeting on Wednesday.
And in relation to the prime time interview on Thursday night, did you inform the interviewer in advance of the interview that you would be disclosing that information?
It was signalled in, as often happens in interviews, the topics that we discussed. And I believe my advisor signalled that there was an issue about to break in relation to the board, and that I was.
But did you yourself convey to the interviewer that you would be raising it?
No.
Who conveyed it?
My advisor.
In advance?
Yes.
Okay.
Was, as you often have in these cases, you discuss the topics that will be, and we felt it was the right thing to do to flag there was something emerging, and that the minister would be willing to speak to it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call on Senator Marie Sherlock. The floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Minister, and to the officials for coming here this evening. Minister, can you tell us how many staff you have working personally to you as Minister, and how many staff are working in the media and broadcast unit within the department?
I can get you the exact figures on that. As you can imagine, it's quite vast. It's a huge department, not just based here, but in other places across the country, but I can supply you with those figures.
Okay, and do you have officials, like given that RTE is in receipt of bailout money from the government predating this crisis, and again had to get a bailout at the end of last year and is awaiting further money this year, how many officials do you have working solely on RTE at this point in time?
Oh. I'll have to come back on that, but there are, I think it's 4, because we have the Secretariat of the Expert Advisory Committee, and our AS and Principal Officer are the main people that I would deal with.
So what questions did you ask them, or what information did you ask them about the approval process for the exits to prepare yourself in advance of that meeting that took place last Monday?
We always have briefings ahead of meetings, and I would have even flagged with them at that weekend that there was a question over what I was reading in the papers and how could that possibly be true, because that one was referring to July, and we teased out the questions that we would ask, not only on I suppose the severance packages, but how now it arose in relation to the role of the board.
But your staff would have been aware, your officials were aware of the new terms of reference of the Remuneration Committee and the new process with regards to the approvals of exits, and they would have informed you of that before the meeting last Monday.
Yeah, but the key point was, not that they were in place for Mr. Collins' package. We were not aware of that because we never received a formal communication.
But your officials sat in a PAC hearing last September and heard Paula Malooly set out exactly what the changes were. That is correct.
That was in October that they sat in that 2 days after the agreement had actually been reached.
Okay, I understood it was September, perhaps it's October. Just with regards to the meeting that took place last Monday, and when you asked that specific question with regards to board approval, who precisely was with you or in that room when you asked that question?
The Principal Officer, the AS, the SecGen, and my advisor, the Chair and the DG.
And nobody piped up when the Chair said what you had to say? Nobody said anything to try and correct or clarify the record at that meeting? No. Okay. Is there something further to be added? No. Okay. So surely that says a lot in terms of the culture even and the relationship between those attending the meeting, that nobody else would clarify what had actually happened with regards to the approval process, even if the Chair didn't remember. I think that's telling in itself.
Well, actually, on the Wednesday, the former Chair volunteered the information herself that the new approval procedures would take place in the future. Not only was she saying they haven't taken place in these two, but she pointed to the fact, and we have new terms, and they will govern any future severance packages. We will now have a role in the future going forward.
And no official asked at that meeting, well, we were told that the Remuneration Committee had the new terms of reference as of late last year. Why hasn't it taken effect before now?
That's exactly why we were just double checking with the chair in that meeting. That was the former chair. That was the full point, because we couldn't understand why it was reported in the paper, and I was asking, why haven't you clarified this? Because you didn't have a role, and this was even in relation to the July.
So can I ask, with regards to the exit package of Richard Collins, did you ask at any time prior to last Monday about the details of the exit package for Richard Collins? You knew there was a process, you knew there was mediation. Did you ever ask what the outcome of that process was?
I knew that it had been a long independent mediation process, and I suppose the exact point is, because it was a matter for the DG,
but sorry,
that's why
Minister,
I wouldn't ask the question. If I had known that the chair had a role, then I would ask questions.
But RTEs in receipt of state monies that your department is overseeing, surely the question would have been asked about what the outcome of that process was. Are you telling me that no official in your department had knowledge as to the outcome of that process?
On the total sum, absolutely not, no.
I think
that's an operational matter for the DG, and as we've learned in the last week, bound by a confidentiality clause that cannot be breached. So it's not for me as Minister or my officials to ask the DG to break a legal agreement.
Breda O'Keeffe's exit package, you expressed surprise at the sum of that package. Why didn't you ask questions? Why didn't your officials ask questions as to what that package was when it became apparent late last year that she had gone out on a voluntary exit package that was not in accordance with the terms of the rules of the package, of the scheme?
Again, that's an operational matter for the DG, and that's the line that a minister should not cross. And it took the DG to be under the privilege of the committee to reveal that.
So I would like, Minister, and if it's okay, Chair, that the committee would request all correspondence between officials and RT with regards to all these exit packages, because I find it astounding that RT is in receipt of a state bailout and no questions would be asked with regards to the value of these exit packages.
I think you will see in the annual accounts, you will see the full quantum of those.
That the department would choose not to appraise itself of the value of the packages.
We have asked for it to be brought forward, that aggregate sum. But we can't cross over a legal line, and we can't cross over the line between the DG and myself. That was a very drawn-out legal process.
I think there's questions to be asked another day. You talk about a vast number of staff working on RTE. What are they doing? But anyway, I have other questions.
If you had 100,000 people working on RTE, you can't break the law, and you can't ask for something that simply cannot be given.
Well, I think that as state money going to RTE, a bailout going to RTE, and to not ask the very basic questions for you to be finding out through the media about what people are getting by way of exit packages is frankly astounding. With regards to last Thursday night, you informed the nation that you felt you were misled. Why didn't you clarify that Siún Ní Raghallaigh had provided clarification that morning to the issues that you were misled on that week?
Because I thought it was pertinent. It was information that I now had.
But you said you were misled, but you didn't offer that there was a clarification had come that morning to clear up the misleading information you had got on the Monday and the Wednesday.
I think that was what I was saying in the interview, that it now come to my attention that was incorrect information.
No, but she had corrected the information and you didn't make that clear. The second question is that you informed the nation through that interview that a meeting was to take place on Friday, and yet we learned this evening that Siún Ní Raghallaigh had indicated, according to yourself, that she wasn't going to attend that meeting. So was the meeting to take place or not? Because it seemed fairly clear on Thursday night that a meeting was to take place, but we hear now that a meeting was not likely to take place if the former chair was not going to attend.
But it remained my hope that she would, and I would find it an incredible situation if a chair wouldn't come into a meeting. I'd sent the letter at least 2 hours earlier and hadn't received a refusal to it.
With regards to the new chair, what kind of working relationship do you intend to have when a new chair is appointed? I think a new chair looking at this would have a concern that if there's a problem, there's a risk that you would air your grievances on the public airwaves as opposed to dealing with it through the forum of a meeting. So what relationship do you intend to have? What assurances can you give to the incoming chair that business will be done within a meeting and not over the airwaves?
The same that I will speak to the board on this week, that the focus is absolute on moving forward, on putting RTE and indeed public service media on a sure footing, on making sure the reforms are implemented, and with any new chair saying the only issue for me is that I must be in possession of all facts at all times.
Minister, do you accept that you have damaged, I suppose, RTE this week or last week, that you have also caused enormous difficulties for those in the independent production sector? I understand from freelance crews that no projects have been approved for March and April. These are people's jobs, their schedules, their production, and any project over €1 million has to go through the board, and yet we don't have a functioning board because there's no chair. So do you accept that you have caused damage to the independent production sector because of the decisions you made last Thursday and the result now that we have no chair and no functioning board of RTE?
The board is continuing to meet and have decided on a rotating chair until we put a chair in place, and that is my absolute priority now. So it's not correct to say there isn't a functioning board.
But are you aware that effectively no decisions have been made by the board, or certainly that there are issues within RT with regards to approving commissions, external commissions, and that this is having a very serious impact on the independent production sector, and that there's a stalemate within RT now which has been exacerbated by your actions last Thursday night?
But the board is continuing to meet, and I'm going to meet with the board.
But are you concerned that effectively no decisions have been made, or effectively that all commissioning has been paused for March and April, that projects have been put on hold, they have been deferred to the end of the year? Are you concerned about that?
Obviously, the board made a decision to continue meeting, and I will meet them on Monday. And my concern is about, on focus, is on getting the future funding model absolutely on a sure footing for RTE. But the issues that you're raising now, I was not aware of that it's just been frozen in the last few days. What you're talking about, productions, that these decisions were made just in the last 4 or 5 days?
I think the past few weeks, to be honest. These issues have been there for the past few weeks, and they become exacerbated by what has happened over the last few days.
Oh, I thought you were saying it was just on foot of the chair.
No, but there's a general stalemate within RTE that has now become worse. Well, and I'm asking, is that a cause of concern for you?
Well,
I'm not.
Obviously, that's why my focus has been on those expert advisory committees, getting the recommendations and moving. What the sector actually needs to put them on a sure footing is that future funding model, that certainty of it. And also, once we have the expert advisory committees, the first tranche of the €40 million will be released.
Last question, Chair. Just with regards to the bogus self-employment, we understand that RT have made a provision with regards to those who have been found to be actually legitimate employees as opposed to self-employed. But we also have, concerns that the 20 million figure, as I understand it, makes no provision for entitlements. So what actions have you taken as Minister to ensure that RT has proper provision for misclassifying workers as self-employed when they in fact were employees, and that the bill will be much greater than 20 million?
That's an ongoing matter with the DSP. it's not for me to interfere in that. But I think I hope all staff are treated properly, equally, and fairly. I've always said that. And in relation to the broader picture, I hope that we can reach a decision on the funding model as soon as possible.
Have you taken steps to ensure that RT has proper provisions in place to meet the bill associated with misclassifying workers as self-employed?
Well, when we have to establish what that figure is, and that's the unknown now. And as I said, it's the Department of Social Protection are continuing that scope investigation into that classification and potential reclassification. So RTE don't even know what the final figure is yet. And because the Department of Social Protection are still making their
But I will have to conclude there, Senator Sherlock. I really will. I'll move on. Deputy Rory O'Murrough, the floor is yours and you have 10 minutes.
Our officials for coming here, and I hope I won't repeat a huge amount. Obviously, we've been through a fair amount. Could I just get some clarity around what time we're talking about on Thursday? Who exactly Siún Ní Raghallaigh contacted? And then if you could give an outworking of what happened throughout the day right to prime time, please.
Yeah, I have a timeline here. So there was a call with the Assistant Secretary at 10 a.m. And we're happy to, I think that was asked already, to release this as well, if needs be. So the Chair rang the Assistant Secretary around 10 a.m. and to say that she had inadvertently given me incorrect information.
She didn't say how, or she wasn't asked how she gave information incorrectly?
She said that she just had made an error and had given me incorrect information in the meetings that week, on the Monday and the Wednesday, that she had told me that the incorrect information, and she had forgotten that she actually had approved that package.
Okay.
And so I suppose the Assistant Secretary thanked her for the clarification and then said that she would come back and let me know.
Sorry?
So the Assistant Secretary said, thank you for that information. I will report back to the
Minister.
The Minister, yeah. And come back and said that to me. I was over in Leinster House. I think it was maybe an hour later or so that I came back from Leinster House, or I can't remember the exact time. But
So your Assistant Secretary told you at about 11 o'clock?
Yeah.
Right. And, okay.
So obviously there was a conversation amongst those of us who had been in the meetings on the Monday and Wednesday. I was quite taken aback because it had been quite detailed, the question, especially on the Wednesday morning, as I said, because I'd received that cover letter that sort of was...
No, I get that. So, but just quickly, because obviously we've limited amount of time. So,
Okay, so then there was, I made the decision then. I said, look, I'm going to have to write to the Chair in relation to this. It is a significant error. And the Assistant Secretary then rang the former Chair at about 2ish, and 2 p.m. I think it was, and advised the Chair that I had been concerned about the incorrect information, that I had gone out in public to clarify the record for her, and that I would write to state that. And the Chair...
And right to state exactly what?
At that stage, just said the Minister is going to write a letter just to say that she's disappointed that... I feel like I'm speaking in the third person about myself.
That's okay.
I don't mean to. That I was going to write a letter to say that I was disappointed. I was just indicating that there was a letter coming. And the Chair said, she regretted the error, and then stated that she believed she had phoned the former Secretary General last October to say that the process had concluded, that independent process, and that he would be leaving the organisation. And she said in that phone call and the language used was that she imagined she would have also referred to the role of the board in approving it.
Right, so she was stating at that stage that she believed she may have told, obviously the Gensec at that stage, exactly how this process was going to work. Okay, right, so now we're talking, this conversation is over. What are we, 2:15?
Probably, yes, yeah.
Right, so then you're told about it at 2:15. So you know at this stage, as far as you're concerned, if Siúni Rahilly is sent this letter, speaking of your disappointment, which is basically a telling off that she will be resigning. Yes?
Not yet, not at that stage. She just stated that the new news in that phone call was that she imagined she had told the former Secretary General that the role of the Remuneration Committee.
Okay.
So then there was a call after that. I think the Secretary General might have been in committee. So then when the Secretary General was back, we spoke to him in relation to it, and I think he rang, or the chair rang the Secretary General around 2:30, and she.
So the chair rang the Secretary General at 2:30.
Yeah, and she expressed to him her unhappiness at the prospect of receiving a letter from me, which would reflect my disappointment.
Right, so then it's 2:30, and you know if the letter is sent, as far as she's concerned, this is.
Which she was stating that she felt if I wrote a letter saying I was disappointed, that she would see that as a lack of confidence and she'd have to consider her position.
Lack of confidence, yeah, right, and that's disappointment. And also this is something that's likely to come out in an FOI at a later stage, anyway. So you're aware of that, right? So it's now 2:30. There is no further correspondence, or is there, between your department or anyone else with Siúni Rahilly? And it's the letter that.
Oh yeah. So there's a call with the Assistant Secretary at 4:30.
Right, so that's the Assistant Secretary and.
The Chair phoned the Assistant Secretary.
Chair phoned, right. And what happened in that phone conversation?
And the Chair told the Assistant Secretary that RTE had just received a press query about the approval of exit packages and the role of the Remuneration Committee.
Right, so basically at that stage all the information is with all the main players.
I think they received a press query from one person maybe, or one organisation. That RTE had received a press query.
Right. But either which way, we're talking about a 4:30 that basically all the information is already in play, and we're talking about you're still going ahead onto prime time at 9:30. Because, right, can we say from 4:30 nothing else happens in relation to communication?
No, well, I called, the Assistant Secretary called the former Secretary General because of the indication that there was, that she had imagined she'd spoken to her. So she said, and just checking with the former Secretary General, and she said that she had recalled being told by the Chair that the settlement had been reached through independent mediation and that he would be leaving, but the Secretary General had no recollection of being told that it was approved by the Remuneration Committee of the Board, and I think I spoke around that time with the Secretary General too.
Right, so at that stage, right, that's 4:30, that's to a degree the checks and balances have happened in relation to checking the stories as exist in your your statement in front of us today, yeah?
And
okay.
I'm in the process of deciding will I send a letter to the former Chair or not.
So when do you send the letter?
I think it was at about 7:30.
Right, so 7:30 you send a letter that states...
oh, sorry, there was another call. There was a call with the Secretary General at about 7:15.
Right.
And at this stage, he rang the chair to say I had made the decision to issue the letter and to seek a meeting the following morning, and reminded her that I was in a pre-arranged interview with Primetime. She would have been aware of that from the day before. The former chair knew that, and indicated to the chair that if I were asked, it's not a thing I could conceal if I'd been given the wrong information. So the chair stated that she was not happy at the idea of being called to another meeting that week, because she had been at a few meetings. But we were offering virtual as well as in person. But the chair at that stage said she was unhappy at the idea of another meeting.
Right, so she's unhappy with a meeting, she's unhappy with a letter stating that you're disappointed in relation to her, and we all know that the threat of her resigning is on the table.
Yep.
Right, the letter is sent at 7:30.
And so the Secretary General rang again, because he came back to me with that information, that she wasn't happy about having to meet, but I felt if I had made the decision that I needed to send a letter, I wasn't going to change my mind. Obviously, I felt it was worthy of a meeting to discuss it. So the Secretary General then rang back the chair at about 7:10 to say, exactly that I had really felt it was still important. I couldn't change my mind on that when I had made the decision in discussion with the officials, and that we would be writing the letter and offering to meet on person or online.
Right, so then, yeah, it's going to be difficult to finalise. Right, well, at 7:30, the letter is sent.
Yep,
everybody is aware of what exactly is in play now. You're sending a letter to a chair that you said thought was really diligent, showed huge commitment. You know that if you're sending her a letter of censure, that she has already stated that she's going to resign. We are a couple of hours away from going on prime time. And are you happy with the questions, your commentary on prime time, where you repeat the fact that you were given inaccurate information, but also that you were disappointed? And we know that obviously that was the issue she had, that you were sending a letter of disappointment. Now you say on prime time, whatever, and if I had more time, I would ask the question, are you happy you went on prime time? Are you Are you reasonably happy you got asked the question? Are you happy with the answer that you've given? And are you happy that Siún Ní Raghallaigh resigned? Because based on what happened that day and the questions that you've asked, I can't see any other way this was going to work out. You give her no way out, and we basically had a forced resignation live on prime time.
That wasn't my intention at all. Certainly wasn't. I had information going into prime time, and I did explain in my statement the background, and it's not that I expressed no confidence. I kept the door open.
But you knew the issue she had with the word disappointment, that you were disappointed. You knew that she had, in relation to a letter, she was willing to resign doing this. Yeah, no, definitely. And look, it's already been said, and I think most reasonable people would say if there was a fear in relation to miscommunication or whatever, or relying on third parties, you would just lift the phone, you would have the conversation, you would get beyond that. There was plenty of time not to go on prime time. And again, I will ask you just as a final question. Do you believe? Are you happy? Are you happy with the commentary and the language you used when asked the question?
Yes or no, Minister, to try and just...
It's not a yes/no answer. As I said many times today, I tried in every way not to say I'd no confidence. I think it's only what would be expected, that a minister would expect a state board chair to meet her if requested. I think that's some of the basics in it. So I would have thought she would give consideration to it, and that's why I tried in every possible way not to say I had no confidence.
Deputy Gould,
I kept
the floor is
repeating
yours
I
in your
wanted
10
to afford her
minutes.
the opportunity.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister, and your staff. And I know, listen, it's been a long evening, and I appreciate your honesty. And I also want to put on the record in relation to Siúní Rahali about her commitment and what she has given in 15 months to RT. And listening to people talk about the lady, I don't know her personally, but she seems a person of great integrity and honesty, and a person who did her very best to bring transparency to RT. And I might come back to some of Rory's points in a minute, but just in relation to transparency and openness in RT, like, Minister, will you support now Sinn Féin's motion to bring RT under the Controller and Auditor General and the Public Accounts Committee, knowing what you know now about the lack of transparency, openness in the organisation? I'd ask for a yes or no on that, please.
I have always said that, and I think only recently, maybe with yourself, Deputy, that I think that is certainly worthy of consideration. But I'm waiting to see if that is a recommendation from the expert advisory committees.
And just on the expert advisory committee, you said you hope to have their reports in March. Mm-hmm. Will we have a commitment? Will there be a commitment given now that following those reports in March, that we will finally get a decision on the TV licence and funding and have an RT under the Public Accounts Committee? Will that be given in March and not kicked down the road? Because, as you said yourself, previous governments have kicked this down the road. You're the Minister now. Can we have that commitment?
Well, in relation to the CNAG, as I said, I have to see what the recommendation is from the expert advisory committees. But as I said to you only recently in the Dáil, Deputy, I'm determined that we make that decision at the earliest possible time.
But if you have the reports in March, like, how long will it take? Like, the amount of reports now that have been, we've got the Future of Media Commission report, which recommends the abolishment of the TV licence, also recommends that RT would come under the Controller and Auditor General and the Public Accounts Committee. Will you give that commitment? Or are you going to let a Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael kick it down the road till after the next local or generals?
No, as I said to you actually as well, Deputy, only 2 weeks ago, that the local and European elections weren't my focus on this. It was about focusing on getting the decision made, and that certainly wouldn't stop me.
Okay, and just in relation to, Rory went through the timeline, at 7:30, between 7:30 and 9:30, was there any more communications or anything else happen before you went on prime time?
With the chair?
Yeah, with your,
yeah, well, I would have communicated with the Chief of Staff. So with my Chief of Staff to communicate with the other Chiefs of Staff that this issue had emerged and that I was sending a letter.
No, actually, I tell you, Minister, listen to Rory O'Murrochú, Deputy O'Murrochú's, I suppose, forensically, the way he went through the timeline there. Like, I've never heard the amount of phone calls and contacts between chairpersons or a former chairperson, assistant secretary generals, former secretary generals. Like, this was crazy last Thursday. For you then to make a decision to go on national television, knowing that everything what was happening, why didn't you press pause? Like, if you thought that the chair had made mistakes, surely you would have respect for the lady to give her an opportunity to come in front of you. Like, why didn't you pick up the phone yourself? You've said all along that your communication was not the Director General, but was the chair. But why didn't you communicate with the chair?
That's why, but I wanted an in-person meeting with the chair. And I said for the reasons that I wanted all those who'd been in the room with me on the Monday and Wednesday. And I think that's why there were so many phone calls, because we just couldn't understand how all of us who had been there in the meetings on the Monday and Wednesday, that I had asked this question quite often on the Monday and especially on the Wednesday, that suddenly it was emerging that there was a lapse of memory.
Minister, on the Thursday night on the prime time, and like, had you discussed with any of the party leaders what had happened on the Thursday and that you were going on national television then, and obviously this was going to come up. Did you not discuss that with the party leaders?
I had contacted the chiefs of staff through my own, the Green Party chief of staff, to say that this issue had emerged, that I was sending a letter, and I just signalled that there was a pre-arranged agreement to go in prime time. That's all that the...
So the Taoiseach, the Taoiseach and the Minister of Transport all knew that this was breaking and you were going on?
They wouldn't have known it was breaking because I only got that word as I was coming into to Montrose. But they would have known when I sent a letter.
You said earlier, and I don't mean to be putting you under pressure, but just going through the timeline, you said earlier that at the 7:30 call that the chair had, that RT had been contacted to say that revelations were breaking by one media organisation. Is that true? What time did that happen at?
I think around 4:30 in that meeting. We can release this.
Oh, yeah, no, but my point is, if that happened at 4:30 and you were going on prime time at 9:30, that was 5 hours later. There's been a number of calls before and afterwards, and the leaders weren't notified that this was happening.
They knew that I'd issued a letter to the chair seeking to meet her the following day. They knew that was issued because she had now remembered that she had sat or chaired the remuneration committee that cleared the exit package. They knew that I'd asked that question several times, and now that it was a different answer on the Thursday. And they knew I had a pre-arranged interview with
because
prime time.
I actually watched the prime time on Thursday night, and then I turned over to the night show because it was like, for political people, it was gripping viewing, right? And I sincerely felt sorry for the chairperson, Siúnni Rahali, because I knew the first time you were asked, had you confidence that that lady was gone? No, I'm not around. I'm only at TD 4 years, but I knew that. Now, surely your staff with you, surely the people in your department knew. Once you were asked that question, she was gone. Like, the question was asked earlier, I can't remember by who, was this a conscious decision? Like, there was no other way for the chair to go, but she had to fall on her sword. Like, what was the hurry about doing prime time? No disrespect, I was available last Thursday night if they're looking for someone to interview, right? You didn't need to be there. Like, for this lady, for this interview, like, I can imagine she was at home last Thursday evening, phone call after phone call coming in, being told that the minister was going to write to say that she was disappointed in her and not revealing all the information. Because, Minister, I was here last Thursday at the media committee, and I'm only new to this committee. And I asked the Director General a question about Rory Coveney's. I asked him, did he retire? Or did he resign? And I was told he did. And then I asked, did he get a payout? And I was told he did. And then I asked, well, if he resigned, how did he get a payout? Like, and you still have confidence. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have confidence in the Director General, but it's like there's one rule for the chair and another rule for the Director General. From what I can see in the timeline, you knew at 11 o'clock last Thursday morning what was going to happen.
No, I didn't. I was still hopeful that she would agree to meet me on the Friday, no matter what she was saying, because I felt it was a rash decision, and I think it's quite unprecedented if a chair of a state body would refuse to meet a minister. So I was still hopeful that would happen, and I said on several occasions on prime time that as I said, I was trying to keep the door open by not saying I have no confidence and saying I want to afford her an opportunity to speak to me.
I tell you, Minister, we're playing around with words. You were asked, you knew last Thursday evening when she had left you know that if you sent a letter that she was probably going to resign or considering resigning, and you still sent a letter at 7:30. 7:30 in the evening, 2 hours before you go live. What was it? Like, number one, I don't think there was a need for the letter to be sent out. If the letter was going to be sent, it should be sent during the day. So all these phone calls happened. Like, why 7:30 in the evening?
Because we had, you have to understand, it was trying to establish the facts and being just really in shock that the story had changed on the Thursday. Such was the extent of the questioning, especially on the day previous, on the Wednesday meeting. Because I just couldn't understand. So I was actually going back and saying, are you certain? I can't understand this, because only yesterday you said under no circumstances. Only yesterday you said in future. So I just couldn't understand that. So there was a lot of not understanding how everything could have changed. And then it was deciding how best to approach it.
But Minister, like confidence. From what I can see now, you didn't have confidence in the chair on the Thursday, and you're writing to the chair looking for a meeting. And on the meeting, the following day on the Friday, if she turned up, you were going to tell her you were disappointed. And from what I can see and listen to your comments, you hadn't confidence in the chair. Surely you should have given her the respect then not to do the prime time or interview. And this woman has put in a tremendous amount of work over 15 months. I suppose your official, did she not think is advising the minister? I know you're not here being questioned tonight. Did someone not say it to you? Obviously the whole place knew this, and the last question then is, who alerted the media to this happening? Because this is like a setup. This was like a setup. It looked like a setup.
To conclude, Minister.
I've no idea. We started getting text messages on the way out to Montrose around 9 p.m. So I've no idea how that happened. It's certainly not something I would ever want to happen as I'm going into to prime time. I've no idea whatsoever who alerted media, but it wasn't just one media outlet that had it or that came to my attention at 9 p.m. around 9 p.m. on the Thursday.
And the last year, very small one. Last week I asked the chair, Kevin Parkhurst. Everyone has got fear.
I know, but
just one last question.
Left, very quickly.
Tiny one. Last week I was asked to ask the Director General, Kevin Parkhurst, about when you resign if you get a payment or not. With all the officials you have and yourself and all the comings and goings in RTE in the last number of months, did no one think of asking that question?
Asking?
The question, if a person resigns, do they get a payout?
Well, see, the
as in the private sector, it wouldn't happen.
Operational matters like that are for the DG, and it was my understanding that it was a straightforward resignation. Okay. But unfortunately last week the chair admitted to me that she forgot to tell me that it wasn't a straightforward resignation.
Okay, Minister, thank you very much. Now, moving on, Senator Timmy Dooley, the floor is yours and you have 10 minutes. Can I just say at this point, we have received apologies from Deputy Kieran Cannon. I admit I'm omitted to say that at the beginning, but just to note those.
Thanks very much, Chair, and just to welcome the Minister and to thank her for being with us for so long. At the outset, I want to pay tribute to Siún Ní Raghallaigh. I've had the benefit of meeting her here on numerous occasions. I've found her to be beyond reproach, somebody who took on a really difficult job, shown immense effort to try to resolve this issue. One can only imagine the challenges that she faced, the kind of detail that she was trying to work through on a daily basis, the multiplicity of angles that were emerging, all for what is a non-executive role. I doubt that she realised the breadth and depth of work that was involved in it, but she seemed to take it on with a great degree. I think it's a huge loss to the organisation, a huge loss to the state that she's gone. And I just want to put that in the record. I would have full confidence in her, notwithstanding the issues that have arisen, and I share others in terms of having confidence in Kevin Parkhurst and the work that he's trying to do. So just want to get to try to understand how we got to where we were, Minister, and I'm not going to go back over the issue in detail, but for me, based on everything you've said, the core of it is that there was inaccurate information provided to you, that you were misinformed by the former chair, but you accept that that was inadvertent. You've said that, yeah.
I don't feel it was intentional.
Yeah, that was inadvertent.
A lot of respect for the former chair.
So it was unintentional. That there was no board approval was really the core of the issue for the exit packages of 2 individuals. That's your big issue, that there was no board approval for these, but that there was a promise that it would happen in the future.
Yes, that I've been told there would be no board approval, that I'd been told in the same week that the chair forgot to tell me.
And that happened on Monday and it happened on Wednesday, and then you got clarification. Now, I don't mean to be facetious, but that sounds a little bit like, to me, a child saying to the teacher or their parents on 3 or 4 occasions, I don't have my homework done. Do you have your homework done? No, I don't have my homework done. Have you your homework done? No, I don't have my homework done. Have you your homework done? No. And then a little bit later, I have my homework done. I did actually get it done. So in truth here, Minister, Siún Rathlig has been pillared for actually doing what she was intended to do. Now, granted, she misinformed you, and I think she accepts that in what I have read, that it would happen in the future. But it's actually happened in the past. So there was board oversight, and it did get board approval. Now, I get the little bit of misinformation, but who amongst us haven't forgotten something? And when you take that, when you put that in the context of everything and the detail that she was working through with the various different investigations, I think she could be forgiven for that. Would you accept that's a fair characterisation?
I agree with you in all the positives that you're saying about the chair, and there's no denying it. As I said on many occasions here, genuine, committed and hard-working, dedicated to the good of public service broadcasting. But really, whether unintentional, that's what I'm saying, I believe is unintentional, but unintentional or not, and it's not as simple as having no homework done. A minister, the direct line of communication with the Minister of Media is with the chair of the board of RTE, and I must have full confidence as minister, any minister, that they can rely on the accuracy of information and communication.
Yeah, and I get that, Minister, and the accuracy of the information, but the accuracy of the probity of the work that was done was there. Whilst there was a miscommunication, we accept that. But in terms of the probity and the governance, what's really important now, fair enough, bit of information, got it wrong. You also mentioned numerous occasions, but it was numerous occasions about the same issue, because you know it was repetitive about that. But so she was misinformed about that single issue. Now, I think she should have been given the benefit of the doubt with respect. Now, I know where you're coming from and I understand that, but the benefit of the doubt, because the core of the issue here is, was she driving change? Was she putting in place a structure that was that had appropriate governance? And the answer to that is yes. So she's right on the fundamentals, but she forgot something and she's hung out to dry. Would you accept that?
If you remember, I did give the benefit of the doubt to the chair in July. So I did do that for the sake of stability in the organisation. But I was asking about 2 specific packages on the Monday and again on the Wednesday, several occasions, plus the fact that I discovered on the Monday that information wasn't provided to me in relation to Rory Coveney, the knowledge that she had, and there was another apology on the Monday in relation to that. I queried why it hadn't been clarified by herself that she had been named in print media that she had approved the packages. She didn't understand why I'm paraphrasing here, but in the meeting she said she didn't understand why her name was in there because it had no role whatsoever. It was quite detailed question then on the Wednesday because of the letter I received on the Wednesday. But on that Monday, I actually said, well, I'll go out and clarify for you. And that was the agreement. So the former chair knew that I will go out to the media and clarify that you had no role whatsoever in this. It was, quite significant because some journalists said, hold on, are you telling us now that was
I know, but I mean, I think in sort of religious parlance, it's a venial sin by comparisons to the actual governance issues. That's my view. Obviously, you've explained yours. Then I want to move quickly to you said you got the calls going out in the car. I'm a bit confused about that because whilst once more than one person knows information, it'll get out. Why did you think you had a duty to leak the information to RTE? Some other journalists had a scoop. It was up at some point for RTE to pick up on it, but there is a kind of an expectation in journalistic circles that if somebody asks you a question, you don't run to another media organisation or another journalist and provide them with the information. That's an ethic that exists in journalistic circles, and you might comment on that.
That was not the motivation in any shape or form. It was merely flagged with them that we're aware this issue had emerged in relation to the board, and I would.
But on the one hand, then, Minister, you also said earlier that you flagged to the former chair that if you were asked, you'd respond, you'd address the issue on the prime time. So you flagged that about 4 or 4:30. And now you go to RTE and you flag it yourself so that you're going to be asked. Because RTE it appears, maybe they had the information, but you seem to suggest that you flagged it to them. So do you think that ethically that was the right thing to do?
Well, at that stage, when it was said to the chair that, you know, if I'm asked, I will, it wasn't known.
Why didn't you say to her, I'm going to tell prime time this, I'm going to leak this information to prime time, and sure, they'll ask me, and this is what I'm going to say?
It wasn't a case of leaking at all. It was a case that we had flagged. If I'm asked, I will. But what emerged then a few hours later that somehow it had been leaked
to somebody else.
Yeah.
So you really only so you talked at the beginning about, for the purpose of setting the record straight and transparency and openness, you were only going to offer transparency and openness if somebody else heard about it.
No, I felt it was important to put factual information on the record.
But you said to us that you wouldn't have. Well, you indicated
that. If I would always answer honestly.
You'd always answer honestly, but you actually gave the question to RTE to ask you, to say there's something coming. They don't seem to have known about it. So why didn't you say at the outset, why don't you issue a press release rather than giving it in the back door to RTE when you get out there?
It wasn't like that at all. And as I said on Friday and today, it's not what I would have liked to have happened at all. But I was just putting factual information on the record. Okay, so we'll move to the last point, and if I can, because I've about a half a minute left. Do you have confidence in the members of the board that sat through the Toys for the Musical debacle? I have said I have confidence in the board as it's working now.
So you have confidence in a group of people who, by their own admission and their apology before us here, admitted that they didn't really do their job to the best of their ability. They didn't ask appropriate questions. They didn't tease it through. It was a bit like we thought, we expected, we assumed, but we didn't ask the questions. We weren't told. And you can sit here as Minister, people who were appointed, some at your discretion, and you've confidence in them. And because Siún Ní Raghallaigh, the former chairperson, made what can only be described as a relatively minor mistake, albeit important at the time, but not in relation to governance, not in relation to the loss of money, not in relation to any serious issue, any serious fundamental issue, versus a number of people who are responsible for not just the loss of multi-millions, but the loss by the consumer, by the general public and by the politicians across here, have a loss of confidence in the national broadcaster, and you're not able to equivocate on whether or not you have confidence in them. With respect, Minister, and you've said at the outset, and I don't doubt you because I know you a long time, and I know you're somebody who wants to get information out there and wants to be clear and concise and wants to be transparent. I cannot understand how you could have confidence in elements of the board that sat around when that went on and recognising the consequence of it. You talk about the consequence of the misinformation that you got, and it put you in a difficult position, and I accept that, and that's not good. But by God, the organisation and the state has been put in one hell of a bad position because of the failures or inactions of others.
As I've said all through this evening, you know, the statutory line of communication between RTE and government is really the chair to the minister, and I think it's absolutely vital that that line of communication is wholly reliant on proper correct information on
And
receiving
I accept that,
reliable
Minister,
information.
and you're very clear, and I accept that. But I think your position in relation to other executives stands true in that, but not in relation to members of the board. Because you, at the end of the day, we recommend from this committee or from the committees, the government appoints, but it's on your advice. In the same way as the chair is appointed by the government on your advice. So if there is failures or if there is questions over members of the board, then you have a responsibility, in my view, you have a responsibility to say whether or not you have confidence in individuals who were there at the time when all of this happened. And is your evidence that you have confidence in those?
As I said when that report came out, I think my words were I have confidence in the board as it is working now. But I will await the reports of the expert advisory.
But you have confidence in their. Do you have confidence in their? If you have confidence in their actions as they sat on the board, because it's within their tenure, albeit maybe some of it outside your tenure as minister, but they're now your responsibility with respect. So I'm asking you just one final question: do you have confidence in the members of the board who were there at the time that? Upon whose watch this happened?
As I said at the time, and I just repeating myself because I've just said it there now to you too, but when that report came out, I said I have confidence in the board as it is working now, and I await the recommendations of the expert advisory committee. I think it's really important though for the stability of this organisation that I'm really looking forward to meeting the board this week. I think we need to get a new chair appointed as soon as possible and to working with that board, with the new chair, with the DG, getting RTE on a stable footing and most importantly making the decision once and for all on a funding model for not only RTE but public service media.
Thanks very much, Minister, and thanks for taking the questions.
Thank you very much. Minister, I know it's been a long evening for you and your officials, and I really appreciate it. We're at the 3 hours it comes to me. My final few questions, I'm not going to rehash what has been discussed today because I think everybody's done a stellar job in interrogating that. Can I just make a few small points? We are at this point because of the deep concern around exit packages within RTE. And as you've said yourself, that this arose over the exit package for Mr. Collins, which you didn't believe or understand it to be the case that the board had approved, but we now know that they had approved it. We don't know the figure for that yet. We now know that Mr. Coveney, whom we understood resigned, also received a package. Can I ask you, Minister, have you asked the question, Dee Forbes, who also resigned, did she receive a package at any point?
I think her term would have come to an end when she was resigned. It was coming to an end anyhow.
But did she receive a package? She resigned. We know there's been a precedent set now with Mr. Coveney. We didn't know he'd received a package. We thought he'd resigned. Then we discover he has received a package. I'm asking the same question around the former DG. Have you asked the question, has Dee Forbes, even though she resigned, received a package, an exit package?
Yes, and I've been told she hasn't.
You have asked the question, but she hasn't received.
That's what I've been told.
Okay.
By the DG.
Okay. I, like yourself and my colleagues, we learn a lot from the media and we have to read it from there rather than perhaps our first priority would be get it within the committee. We know on exit packages again, Miss O'Keefe, where this all started off, got a package of 450,000. We read at the weekend, a former head of current affairs in RTE received a package. Can I ask you, Minister, were you across this? Were you aware of it, or were you like the rest of us reading about it in the media?
No.
Specifically with Mr. Nally?
It was something that was not notified to the department.
Have you made any inquiries into it?
I've been told, he's not a member of the former executive or indeed the new interim leadership team. He wasn't. So I was told it is a matter for the DG. So it can't be revealed.
Am I right in saying that package and that agreement was agreed to during the reign, we'll say, of our new DG and the new or the former chair, as it was, of the board?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And is it your understanding that that Mr. Nally, whom we're specifically talking about, and again, I'm not revealing anything that's not in the public domain. My understanding of it is he was somebody who had been over current affairs and there had been a complaint made against him by staff. And you know, I've said it in here that I have heard from speaking with staff, you know, real live accounts of intimidation and bullying. I'm not putting that on him, but I am, and I think it's in the public domain, that there was a specific complaint made about him. Can I ask you, do you know, or have you been informed, or have you asked the question, what was the cost in terms of the interrogation of an investigation into him around complaints made from other staff within RTE? Was there a cost to the organisation of RTE?
That investigation would have been before the current DG was in place, but it would be a matter for the former DG.
Can I ask the question, are you aware of a cost to RTE to see through an investigation on that gentleman within RTE?
I wouldn't have knowledge of that because that's an
Would you be
operational
shocked
matter.
if I told you that there was a cost to RTE and that figure would be a six-figure sum?
Again, if you have that knowledge, it's not something that you know that I can ask, because, as I've said, with every other exit package, it's matters for the DG, and if there's confidentiality clauses, then
I'm actually talking about the investigation into complaints made against Mr. Nally, that there was a cost to RTE in interrogating that complaint, and that cost could be somewhere within a six-figure sum. My question is, are you across that? Are you aware of that? Has that information been brought to you? Would that be of concern to you?
That information hasn't been brought to me.
Okay. And if I were to say to you that that particular individual who complaints had been made against, those complaints had been upheld, that there was a genuine problem there, if I were to tell you that that person, or if I was to ask you, what would you expect? What would your expectations be of somebody in that position where a complaint has been upheld? What would you expect would happen to somebody in RTE, an official in RTE, a very high-ranking official in RTE, around complaints being made that were upheld? Would you expect disciplinary action? Would you expect a P45? What would you expect?
I'd expect all legal processes and due process to happen in those cases.
And if I were to tell you, and I again, it's in the public domain, that a new job was created for that individual, a new position where complaints have been made, those complaints were upheld, and rather than the normal course of action where disciplinary actions should have been taken, no, we find a situation, and this is in recent times, Minister, this is not 20 years ago, this is in recent times, that no, that individual, a new position was created for them. So I'll give you time to filter this through because you may not be aware. So if I were to tell you that not only was that person a new position created for them, that after a short enough, brief enough stint within the new position of not even 2 years, that gentleman leaves the position and again is afforded an exit package. Would you be concerned around that way of operating within the organisation? This is somebody who has had complaints made against them. Those complaints are investigated at a very handsome cost to RTE. There is no disciplinary action taken. There is a new position created for that person. They're moved sideways, in other words. They're still in harm's way of the staff, if you ask me, when a complaint has been upheld. Not only that, they continue on this path, they're on a very handsome salary, and within less than 2 years, they exit the organisation and exit with a package. Would that concern you, Minister?
Yeah, well, I think whatever happened there, this is another reason why we need the former DG to come before committee or to communicate in relation to this and shed light on what exactly happened there. So, I can't comment upon that if I don't have any knowledge on it.
Okay, well, that's really to my question. So the current DG, the former chair, the board, nobody has informed you, given you any information around this particular, because I think that's of huge public interest too.
Well, when I I had no knowledge. It was something that was not notified to my department. I did ask last week about it, and I was told for legal reasons I couldn't get details on anything.
Sorry, I'm just going to put you over that. You asked who what last week?
In the meetings with the DG and the chair.
Yeah.
But for legal reasons, because
about
as you
this
said,
case with Mr. Nally.
about that case, yeah.
And you were given no information because of legal reasons.
Yes.
Is that acceptable, Minister?
Well, again, like we all want the maximum transparency, and
does it provide transparency?
It doesn't, but this is the case. You know, the legal advice is clear.
Can you
as we
imagine how
know.
infuriated staff in RT
Absolutely.
must be?
Yeah, absolutely.
So can I ask you,
so
Minister?
I said it's
so
not.
this is where you're hamstrung all the time. They always find a way of circumventing the actual truth here. And you're being told, because of confidentiality clauses, you can either find out what happened, the job that was created, the job that was exited, or the package he was exited on.
And that's why I've asked going forward, and I said it in public, and I said it at that meeting, that this sort of the confidentiality clause being the norm rather than the exception. And actually, I think in the code governing governance in these state bodies, it's actually said that it should be the exception rather than the norm. It actually states that there, and that's why I've asked that going forward.
So let's just go back over the last 8 months. Are you aware, or do you know, have you figures out the number of exit packages which the current DG and the former chair agreed to and approved, including confidentiality clause? And I know you're being told the same as I'm being told, it's normal run of things, but these are not normal times where you and the government are trying to bring maximum transparency. Is it really acceptable in this current climate for RTE that this notion of confidentiality clause, which effectively protects people, and in this case arguably has protected somebody who has wreaked havoc in the organisation, that had a huge price tag to RTE, if my information is correct in terms of investigating the actual complaint that was made against them, they're moved sideways, put into a role that didn't exist before. And not only that, the exit after 18 months on a package. It's la-la land stuff.
Yeah, but, you know, I suppose we're at this, you know, employment rights are employment rights, and we've very strong laws governing employees.
I know that.
The same whether in public or private sector. We all wanted maximum transparency in these, but the legal advice is clear.
Can I just say this? Is it not fair that you, as Minister, can expect from your DG and your former chair that they wouldn't enter into agreements like this?
And that is why I have said you need to consider capping any such confidentiality agreements if they need to take place.
Arguably, Minister,
but this should be absolutely the exception.
From the very start, we are not going to be. You're working for an organisation that is state-funded, funded by the taxpayers. There is no such thing, or should be no such thing from here on confidentiality clause. And I think
it is.
Positions should expect that.
I do believe, you know, the employment rights are so strong in this country to protect employees, and they're the same whether you're in public or private
Arguably,
sector.
Minister, the staff were not protected in RT in this occasion, and certainly not the taxpayer.
And absolutely why I have asked him, and he's agreed to give serious consideration to how these are being used. And I've said it must be the exception.
Can I ask you,
rather than
Mr.,
the
do you
norm.
intend to probe that particular instance any further in terms of somebody who had a complaint made against him, it was upheld? Do you intend to investigate that any further? I mean, is that satisfactory to you?
Well, unfortunately, it's the legal advice is clear, and I'm bound by that just as much as you are, just as much as any person in the public. The legal advice is clear, and it's, of course, that's absolutely frustrating, and I can definitely get the frustration and hurt and anxiety of the staff who see this.
It must have been pretty tough,
but that is
bitter
why I
pill to
said going
swallow.
forward it needs to be given serious consideration as one of the
that
reforms
somebody
we
who
need
had a
to see.
complaint upheld against them, they're moved into another position on an equally high salary.
Again, the former DG
and
is
exited on
answerable
a
to
package.
that decision.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Minister. I'd say I've taken my 10 minutes. I know there's one final question that's been indicated to me from Senator Carey. I'm sure, gentlemen, you wouldn't mind a bit of latitude. Very quickly, Senator Carey.
Just a point that actually was more to do with the timelines and the Thursday and Aurora Muraku has gone through it, and I think that information I found was extremely important that we heard that here today, and I think it led to what happened really on Thursday night. And I think it's the chain of events. I felt you were correct to send your letter to the circumstances. I don't think the chair of any board should refuse to meet a minister under any circumstances. And I think if the chair hadn't resigned on Friday morning and had refused to meet the minister, I think they should have been removed from their position. So I think it was the right course of action. And I'd like to get that, and I asked it earlier on, that the documentation from the department with regard to all the timelines on that Thursday of what the correspondence over and back. But I just feel that it was unacceptable, as I say, for a chair of a board, state board appointed by government, to refuse to meet the minister who was representing the government and the taxpayer. So I just think it'd be important to put that information into the public debate.
Get that information to you.
Okay, Deputy, any one final question?
Minister, the terms of reference of the Remuneration Committee were received in the department on November 30th. And it took until last week, almost 3 months later, to start asking questions on it. Is that correct?
But it's the terms of reference actually were never sent in the way they should have been sent, which would be a direct email to me with clearly stated these are the new terms of reference, as was sent to me on September 5th.
So when they were received, Minister, what did your officials tell you?
It was received along with, I think it was like 18 or 19 other documents.
Why didn't you clarify to see were these terms of reference in effect?
Because I received them 2 months after the agreement with Richard Collins. That is exactly why we were querying it last week.
But certainly that clarification was required at the time when they were received back in November 30th and not last week. Do you agree?
Well, it wasn't even clear in how they were sent, and the cover letter, I had it earlier, didn't refer to the terms of reference being in those 19 documents. So I think that's another weakness in how communication was
Did you
done.
clarify it?
So it was in a code, I just have the letter, that's what I was looking for. It was in an RTE Code of Practices checklist. And the email was, I've now shared a new folder with you containing a sheet responding to the questions and 19 further attachments cross-referenced in the document. Apologies for the delay, but nothing in relation to flagging that these are the new terms of reference that have now come into effect, or when they come into effect. We were not... definitely not of the opinion when we received them 2 months later that they were in effect for Mr. Collins.
But should your officials have clarified that matter?
No,
very finely.
No, it was really the point is that they were never communicated properly to me. That is why I was asking these questions last week. They're sent 2 months after in a document type dump in relation to Code of Practice checklist that we are seeking. Like, that is a problem as well if you're not getting new reforms communicated formally to the Minister. What was done on September 5th, Deputy, was the correct way of doing things in relation to the reforms that were flagged with the Griffin.
Minister, your officials were present in the Public Accounts Committee on the 12th of October when it was clarified very, very unequivocally by Paula Malooly that those terms of reference were ratified by the board on September 26th. Now, are you telling me that your officials, some of whom are here, some of whom aren't, that they didn't inform you that these terms of reference were now in place and ratified?
I saw the reports saying that it was explicitly told to the officials, and then read that it was in a PAC meeting of many hours, and indeed the deputy who asked the question didn't see any significance to it. It wasn't reported on the time.
They were told this. They were there. They were actually very, very close to the person who gave this evidence. They were in very close proximity.
And actually, it was in passing. And the language was in the future tense, it will now present a report. It will report to the board. So it certainly wasn't clear. And this happened after the Mr Collins package was agreed.
If you've concluded that you were misinformed by the chair, do you now accept that you were misinformed by your own officials in relation to this?
We hadn't received the terms of reference, and we still actually haven't seen a formal notification of the
They
terms
were
of
present
reference.
in the committee, Minister,
And
on the 12th of October. You received the details in writing. You actually received the documents, and we've requested them. I want to see them as well. You have all of that documentation since before Christmas. Why did it take for there to be public outcry arising from the revelations in this committee on the 14th of February for you to actually start asking questions about it? Would you not accept the information was there within the department amongst your officials? They either didn't give it to you, or you didn't see it, or that information was there.
I think that what transpired at that PAC meeting was that Ms Mullooly outlined changes, and it sounded, as I said, using the future tense, that would apply in the future. It wasn't obvious that they'd taken
How would you have
effect.
thought that it wasn't kicking in?
How
would you have thought if it was ratified that it wasn't effective from that time?
Because you would presume that the chair would communicate that in a formal manner to the minister.
That's not plausible, Minister.
And this was only flagged 2 days after the Mr Collins package. The fact that I hadn't been told that it had been approved by the board, and even the chair herself, up until last Wednesday, was saying the terms of reference would come into effect in the future. So the chair of the board was saying to me last week.
Why the 3-month delay in asking questions on this? Because this was obviously something that was very important. Why 3 months to ask the questions?
Because it was never explicitly advised to us that the terms of reference were in force and applied to the Richard Collins case. It was a process commenced in July. It was an ongoing case.
Do you believe that your
3
officials
months.
neglected to inform you and didn't do their job?
I believe the officials are doing an incredible job for the last 8 months.
They didn't brief you on this. They didn't accurately brief you on this, Minister. They didn't accurately brief you on this, and you still feel that they were doing a good job?
Senator Byrne, moving on.
Do you see how there's an inconsistency between how the chair was treated and how officials are treated? There's a total breakdown in communication here, seemingly.
Senator Byrne,
you can accept one and not the other.
You have 2 minutes.
I'm very conscious, I'm very appreciative, Minister, that you and your officials have come before us to address this issue. And I think from having listened to it, what is clear is that there was a breakdown in trust between yourself and the chair. And when there is a breakdown in trust between the Minister and a chair, with respect, there's only one eventual outcome, that the chair is likely to have to go. Can I ask, at any stage previously in the relationship that you had with Siún Ní Raghallaigh, did Siún Ní Raghallaigh offer to resign, or did you seek her resignation?
No.
Okay. Well, it relates. So it still comes then to the final case of that. Siún Ní Raghallaigh as chair, what you told us, Minister, is Siún Ní Raghallaigh as chair of an authority, your direct link, refused to receive a letter where you would have expressed particular concerns essentially about her performance, and basically expressed a view that she was going to resign.
Senator Byrne.
You still went on prime time, knowing all of that in the background. Was it not inevitable, though, if you were, knowing all of that there was only going to be one outcome? If the chair of any other agency refused within your ambit, and there's a wide range that are there, if the chair of any other agency came to you and either threatened to resign or refused to receive a letter, would you accept it?
And please, I'm going to...
I'd like the Minister just to answer, Chair, if I can.
I'll let her answer all together, okay? One quick question, Deputy Gould.
As I said on Thursday, I was trying to afford every opportunity for that face-to-face meeting.
Deputy Gould, quickly.
Minister, you touched on it earlier, but I didn't. When you were in prime time, was it you broke authority? What was happening? Was it one of your officials because they decided, or you asked them to do it? I still can't get over that ye leaked this authority just before you went on air. Can you explain the rationale behind that?
One quick question. She really has covered that. And Senator Sherlock, one quick question.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, are there issues of concern that you're concerned about right now with regards to RT that the committee or the public have yet to be made aware of? So you're fully confident that there is...
Right now, yes, but it has been sort of a roller coaster. But I'm really hoping that we're on the right road now. I think that we're moving in the right direction. I'm really hoping that's it. And
Minister, if you could speak to Mr. Goulds, Deputy Goulds, Senator Burns, and one last one, very small, Deputy Murku, I mean very small.
Minister, are you happy with everything that you did on Thursday? Because I'll agree what was said earlier, that there was only one way this was ending, and this was with Siún Ní Raghallaighe's resignation. I can't see it any other way.
Minister, you have the last word responding to everybody.
It was never my intention for this to emerge on air. I was always hoping that and as I said many times, I was trying to afford her the opportunity to come in and meet me face to face, to not meet, to be indicating you wouldn't meet the minister as a chair of a state body. I just couldn't believe that would happen. So that's why I was trying to afford the opportunity for Friday and hoping that meeting would happen. Again, putting on record, though, that everything that transpired next week, as I said, not my intention to do it in the way it happened, and I certainly don't believe it was the former chair's, that she was intentionally giving me inaccurate information. And if I was to end on anything, it's again to put on record my genuine thanks for the chair in the work that she did, in her commitment.
Thank you, Minister.
And also that I think we need to move forward, and I'm determined to do that as Minister, with the DG, with the board, and of course the crucial role of government in taking this decision and before the summer.
Thank you, Minister. Can I thank you and your officials for being with us here this evening. That concludes, before you go, gentlemen, is it agreed that clerks seek of any follow-up information and carry out any agreed actions arising from today's meeting, including your letters and invitations? Thank you very much. That concludes our business for this evening. The committee stands adjourned until 1:30 on Wednesday, the 20th of March. Gurmila Maiga Gathina.